Chapter 12 Chapter 57 to Chapter 60 In the remote, uninhabited western region of Russia, a simple house stood amidst trees and vegetation. A pastoral-style home, it was surrounded by vegetable gardens, fruit trees, and a pig pen. Natasha, Alexei, and Yelena approached the house, walking side by side. As they moved, Natasha and Yelena's eyes flicked downward for a moment, noticing a subtle change in the ground beneath their feet, though neither paid it much attention. When they reached the barbed wire fence, a faint movement came from inside the house. Their arrival had clearly caught the attention of its owner. The door creaked open, and a woman stepped out, holding a shotgun aimed at them. But when she saw Natasha, Yelena, and Alexei, the woman froze in shock. The sunlight revealed her appearance a tall figure, mature and beautiful, dressed in a red and white plaid shirt and jeans. Her long golden red hair added to her feminine allure, but her sharp eyes carried a cold, detached air, like someone who had taken lives without remorse. As Natasha got a good look at the woman's face, her own sharp and cold demeanor softened with recognition. Natasha, Yelena, Alexei. The woman muttered in disbelief, frowning as she lowered the shotgun. Natasha, Yelena, and Alexei opened the gate and walked down the winding path toward her. Melina tilde, Alexei called out, his unshaven face lit with excitement. Seeing his lover and their family reunited, he was happy but visibly nervous. Melina stood on the front steps, looking at the three of them before turning around to open the door. Come in. Without hesitation, Alexei hurried inside. Natasha and Yelena exchanged a glance before following him. The inside of the house was spacious, a classic example of Eastern European rural homes with wooden structures. The walls, decorations, and furniture were simple and unassuming, typical of an ordinary rural household. Melina led them to a long wooden table and gestured for them to sit. After brewing several cups of coffee, she placed the mugs in front of them and sat down herself. A heavy silence filled the air, making the atmosphere awkward. Alexei's lips quivered with excitement as he looked between Natasha, Yelena, and Melina. His eyes were filled with joy and satisfaction. Yelena stared down at her coffee, while Natasha, feeling a mix of emotions, finally broke the silence. Have you been living here for long? Melina nodded, taking a sip of her coffee. About 4 years. After finishing her drink, Melina looked at the three of them, her brow furrowed. Dracov's death and the fall of the Red Room was that you're doing? Yelena lifted her head and glanced at Natasha, her eyes saying more than words ever could. To be precise, it was Natasha and the people behind her who did it. Natasha ignored Yelena's glance, wanting to take advantage of the moment to uncover the truth. She looked at Melina, her eye lowering slightly. You, what exactly were you? A former instructor. Retired. Melina hesitated before answering, her voice quiet. I was just working behind the scenes, continuing something Drakov had envisioned. Natasha pressed on, curiosity in her tone. And what was that? After a moment of silence, Melina sighed. It was a project, something to control the will of those children. Control. Natasha, Yelena, and Alexei were visibly startled. Melina, however, wasn't surprised by their reaction. She locked eyes with Natasha. When you defected all those years ago, Drakov saw it as proof that the products he created had a fatal flaw: self-awareness. After years of turning children into weapons, he couldn't accept that they might develop their own ideologies. She continued, her voice steady but grim. So, he came up with an idea. He wanted to create something that would take away the children's ability to escape his control. He sought a way to manipulate their consciousness completely. And I was responsible for researching it. Yelena couldn't stay silent any longer. But how is that even possible? She asked. Brainwashing is one thing, it's the typical way to make soldiers loyal, but it's a long process. Even then, a brainwashed soldier can start doubting themselves one day. Controlling will with a drug. People have tried, but it's nearly impossible. What you're saying is true, but we've already made some progress. Pheromones, Melina said, her voice steady. By implanting a chip that controls the nervous system, we can essentially achieve mental control. The person implanted with it can't disobey an order. Draco could issue a command remotely, and the chip would force everyone under its influence to comply without question. Her voice dropped even lower. Including orders to asphyxiate themselves. Yelena's eyes widened in disbelief. You've got to be kidding me, she exclaimed, a chill running down her spine. The thought of having such a chip inside her, turning her into nothing more than a mindless robot, was horrifying. Natasha's breathing became heavier, and Alexei clenched his fists in anger. That damn bastard. Alexei growled. He lied to me, locked me up in that hellhole of a prison, and then he did this. He deserves to rot in hell for this. Melina looked down, her expression conflicted. I was the one who developed it, she admitted, her voice laced with pain. Every step of the way, I felt the agony and torture of what I was doing, but I had no choice. Her eyes flickered with emotion. As an instructor, she wasn't supposed to have feelings for the children she trained, but as a woman, it was impossible for her to shut off all emotions. Especially when it came to Natasha and Yelena, whom she had come to see as her own daughters. Receiving this mission tore her apart. It felt like she was being dragged through hell, and yet, she lacked the power or the courage to disobey Drakov's orders. For years, she carried that burden. But then, 2 years ago, something shifted. Dreykov changed, seemingly overnight, and the entire situation took a sudden turn. That change made her suspicious, and she cut off all ties with him. Only now, with Natasha, Yelena, and Alexei standing before her, did she realize the truth. Dreykov's transformation, his death, and the collapse of the Red Room, everything was connected to Natasha. Melina felt an overwhelming sense of relief like she had never known before. With Dreykov dead, the Red Room dismantled, and the children finally free, she no longer had anything to fear. This was the most peaceful period of her life. No more orders, no more training, and no more watching those children endure brutal suffering. After a moment of calm, Melina turned to Natasha. You saved those children, and in doing so, you saved us too. Natasha, was it difficult? In her mind, she believed it must have come at a great cost, one far beyond simple effort. But Natasha gently shook her head. It wasn't hard, she said softly. I was just lucky. She thought back to the fateful decision she made while being hunted down. That choice had led her to meet Leon, Wanda, and Sergei. She would never forget the words of the young man with the calm, jade-like demeanor, who spoke to her without even glancing back. Maybe I can give you a place to stay, he had said, a hint of carelessness in his voice. Yet, those words had been enough to create a small crack in the walls around her closed heart. That day, Natasha witnessed something she had never seen before. The wooden house nestled in the mountains wasn't luxurious, but it radiated a warmth that felt foreign to her. It was a home for children who, like her, had suffered tragic and painful pasts. Leon was like an eternal sun, always shining a gentle, warm light on everyone around him. He patiently taught those children, always respecting them, even her, the newest addition. He never doubted anyone. Instead, he used his sincerity to dissolve the shadows clouding their hearts. He led the children and her out of the darkness and onto a brighter path. As Natasha thought about her time with Leon, Wanda, and the other children, a soft, warm expression appeared on her usually guarded face. Melina, Yelena, and Alexei were stunned by the unexpected display of emotion. Melina, noticing the shift, smiled knowingly. It seems I was mistaken. You've met someone very special. Natasha's gaze softened as she replied, because of him I got to have a family again. Family, Melina murmured, repeating the word as though savoring its meaning. She looked at Natasha's serene expression, then asked, can you tell me about him? Natasha was caught off guard. Her instinct was to refuse, to keep that part of her life private. But when she met Melina's curious, gentle eyes, she hesitated and fell silent. A cordon had been set up around the Century building, extending about 100 meters down the street. New York police had parked patrol cars to block off the area, preventing bystanders from approaching. Officers were stationed around the perimeter, ensuring that no one could get too close. At the entrance to the Century building's corridor, several officers were busy conducting an on-site investigation. Among them, a middle-aged man in uniform entered the scene. A police officer spotted him immediately and approached. Chief Stacy, what's the situation? George asked. The officer gave a quick rundown. Based on our investigation, there was a serious gunfight here. We've recovered numerous firearms, including heavy weaponry and grenade launchers. George's eyes widened in shock. Heavy weaponry. While guns were not uncommon in the United States, especially in a city like New York, where crime rates were high and gangs were prevalent, heavy weaponry was another matter entirely. Firearms, both legal and illegal, were everywhere, but heavy-duty weapons were rare and strictly controlled. Anyone caught using them would immediately become a high-priority target for law enforcement. A gun battle involving this level of firepower in the Century building. If word got out, it would ignite a wave of public outrage, with people demanding to know how such an event could occur under the watch of the NYPD. And the bad news wasn't over yet. The officer continued, and there's something strange about the whole scene. He led George to the stairwell entrance, where other officers were conducting their investigation. As they ascended, the officer briefed George. From our survey, aside from the gunfight in the lobby, the most significant activity happened on the stairways. The battle there was intense, almost as if 100 people were involved. Oddly, many of the stairs weren't destroyed. As they climbed, George grew increasingly uneasy. Each level of the stairwell was scorched, the walls blackened as though by fire. There were also numerous craters of various sizes, and holes riddled the passage. When they finally reached the rooftop, things seemed relatively intact in comparison, though bullet holes were everywhere. However, George's instincts kicked in. From the lobby on the first floor, through the stairwells, and now up to the roof, the scene was littered with guns, communicators, and other gear. But something critical was missing. Where are the bodies? George demanded. The officer, looking equally puzzled, took a deep breath. That's the strangest part. There was a fierce gun battle throughout the entire building, and we responded within 20 minutes, cordoning off the area immediately. But we've only found one body. What is going on here? George frowned. What about the surveillance? The officer looked as if he'd seen a ghost. All the surveillance footage from the entire street has been silently erased. It's a complete dead-end case. There's no way to verify anything. This building belongs to someone. What about the employees? Are they missing too? Yes, they're all gone. We checked the records of every employee and director associated with the building, but no one can be located. It's as if they vanished into thin air. George was filled with disbelief. What could this mean? Could everyone in the building have been reduced to ashes after the gun battle? It seemed impossible. As George stood, frowning in thought, a group of uninvited guests arrived at the building's entrance. The elevator doors on the rooftop chimed and opened, revealing a group of figures in suits stepping out. Hearing the commotion, George turned to face them. The man leading the group, dressed in a sharp suit, approached and presented a document. Chief Stacy, FBI Senior Agent John, he introduced himself, handing over the paperwork. We have the authorization. We're now in charge of this case. George flipped through the document, confirming that it was indeed an official authorization letter, complete with a special seal and code. He glanced at Senior Agent John, who was dressed sharply and claimed to be from the FBI. Unsure, George pulled out his phone to verify the situation. After speaking with the director and confirming everything, George sighed in relief. Stephen, he called to one of his officers, let's step back and let the FBI handle this. With a nod to Agent John, George and his team began wrapping up and took the elevator down, leaving the case to the federal agents. Inside the elevator, George's mind raced. This whole case was strange, every aspect of it. There were too many oddities, too many things that didn't add up. And the fact that the FBI had taken over so quickly. That wasn't normal procedure. Usually, transferring a case took time, but this felt almost immediate. Something about this situation was off. The strange nature of this case made it difficult to handle. If it wasn't solved quickly, public opinion would likely put the blame squarely on the police department. Though George was intrigued by the mystery, he wasn't stubborn. If the FBI wanted to take over, it was probable. For the best. The speed at which the case was transferred likely meant the director had pulled some strings. As they reached the first floor, sure enough, a group of suited agents had already set up a cordon and were keeping a large number of reporters at bay. The moment George and his officers emerged, the reporters thrust their microphones forward, bombarding them with questions. But George and his team ignored them, heading straight to their police cars and driving off. Meanwhile, up on the rooftop, the FBI agents got to work. They didn't bother with the discarded weapons scattered across the area. Instead, they used advanced devices, including infrared scanners, to survey the scene. Before long, red footprints became visible on the ground. One of the agents approached Senior Agent John. Sir, based on the footprints and blood samples we've collected, we've confirmed that this was a gathering place for vampires. And they were all killed, the agent continued. John nodded and pulled out a tablet, connecting to a video call. A moment later, a cold, composed female figure appeared on the screen. Agent Hill, John greeted. John, how are things over there? Hill asked. We've confirmed it was a vampire gathering. Around 150 to 200 members, all dead, John reported. Hill's expression shifted slightly. The number was more than she expected. John continued, they were heavily armed, but from the moment the attackers breached the building until all the vampires were killed, it took no more than 5 minutes. Maybe even less. I see. Investigate thoroughly. I'll grant you full access to all resources here in New York, Hill responded calmly. Understood, John replied before ending the call. Handing the tablet to another agent, he glanced around the rooftop and let out a sigh. All the street surveillance had been wiped, with no way to recover it. Whoever did this wasn't ordinary, and investigating them would be a challenge. Well, he muttered to himself. Meanwhile, under the majestic waterfall of the 7 cities of Sky Blade, Leon stood, bare-chested, as water cascaded down on him. With Keisha's assistance in her precise calculations, he trained relentlessly, honing the 3 hockey techniques, refining his body, and mastering his devil fruit powers. Leon's thoughts were abruptly interrupted by a call from Natasha. She mentioned that Melina and her family wanted to meet him, which caught Leon off guard. He knew Natasha was reconnecting with her sister and family, but why was he suddenly involved? Despite his surprise, Leon didn't turn down the request. Tonight. Sure, I'll be there on time, he replied before ending the call. Standing under the waterfall, Leon remained unmoved by the force of the rushing water. The intense pressure didn't bend his posture. Instead, his right hand began to glow with a dark luster, and a terrifying aura solidified around him. Wisps of red lightning suddenly sparked into existence, crackling and coiling around his arm. His eyes, filled with a primal intensity, focused sharply as he compressed his energy. Finally, with a swift upward strike, his fist tore through the air. Boom! The force of his punch, enveloped in red lightning, caused the 100-meter-high waterfall to reverse its flow. The water shot into the sky like an explosion, thousands of tons of it suspended momentarily before falling back down as a rainstorm, drenching everything below. Water droplets clung to Leon's hair, sliding down his forehead, temples, and over his perfectly defined muscles, giving him an almost ethereal, rain-soaked appearance. It was a striking, solitary moment, witnessed only by Leon and Keisha, who silently observed from afar. The combination of pure mental energy and physical energy results in a high-intensity output, Keisha remarked, her graceful figure appearing beside the river. She gazed at Leon with her captivating eyes, explaining, but it places severe demands on the user. The average human physique simply can't handle it. Leon shrugged and jumped in front of her, his movements casual. Keisha snapped her fingers, conjuring a towel out of thin air, which she handed to him. He took it, wiping his hair as they strolled along the riverside path. "How's the analysis going?" he asked. "I've run a rough simulation," Keisha replied. "The three forms of hockey are primarily driven by mental power. That mental energy can be stimulated through specific techniques. In addition, it works in conjunction with physical strength, enhancing both. If you're ready, Captain Leon, we can begin the process at any time. Let's hold off until I return." "And the fruit?" Leon inquired. Keisha's eyes sparkled with knowledge as she elaborated. "Your devil fruit energy is unusual. Once it reaches a certain threshold, I can influence matter and even alter fundamental laws. You can develop a wide range of abilities by manipulating light energy thermal effects, light quanta, and even manipulating hot and cold light sources. Once your body is strong enough, you'll be capable of moving at the speed of light, or even beyond. The potential is enormous." Keisha, speaking from the vast technological wisdom of angelic civilization, considered the glint fruit's potential remarkable. "If you push it far enough," she continued, "and your body can handle the immense energy, you could evolve into something like a star, a walking, human-shaped sun." In a simple country house, night had settled over the land, casting everything into darkness. Only the quiet murmur of voices could be heard from inside the hut. In the kitchen, Natasha, Melina, and Yelena were busy with preparations. Suddenly, Natasha's eyebrows twitched as if sensing something. She glanced out the window. "Leon's here," she said softly. Melina and Yelena exchanged looks before speaking in unison, "Let's go out and greet him." It was, after all, common courtesy to welcome a guest. Melina removed her apron, and the three of them, along with Alexei who was wearing a simple plaid shirt, stepped outside. The night was still and dark, with no sign of anyone on the road ahead. "Is he black? 'Cause I can't see him," Alexei said with a grin. Melina and Yelena looked at Natasha in confusion, but she merely smiled, gesturing with her chin as if to say, "Wait and see." Melina and the others followed Natasha's gaze. They saw a figure emerge from the darkness, accompanied by subtle ripples in the air as if space itself had shifted. Though the appearance wasn't flashy, it was enough to leave Melina, Yelena, and Alexei in awe. As Leon came closer, everyone stepped outside the fence to meet him. Under the moonlight, Leon, wearing a red coat, approached with steady steps. His eyes briefly met Natasha's before turning to the others. "Ms. Melina, Mr. Alexei, and Ms. Yelena," he greeted them, his voice calm and respectful. "My name is Leon. Natasha has probably told you about me. Thank you for inviting me." "Wow, what a guy," Alexei muttered, impressed. Despite his rugged nature, he couldn't help but admire Leon at first glance. Leon's strong, perfectly sculpted physique was evident even through his coat, especially his defined abdominal muscles. As a super soldier, Alexei could feel an intense aura of power radiating from Leon, far greater than his own. Melina and Yelena noticed this as well, both satisfied with their first impression of him. Yelena, in particular, felt intrigued by Leon. While he matched her expectations of Natasha's ally, she was eager to uncover more of his secrets. After some polite exchanges, everyone headed back into the house. Dinner was almost ready, so they all gathered around a long wooden table, chatting while enjoying their meal. Since Melina's family wasn't exactly an ordinary one, their conversations naturally took a different tone than what you'd hear at a regular family dinner. Especially Alexei, who, caught up in the atmosphere, started rambling. He went on and on about his time in the army, how he became a super soldier, and how he always wanted to compete with Captain America. At some point, H. mentioned Dreykov, his anger flaring up as he loudly cursed, even saying he'd dig the guy out of his grave just to beat him up. Melina and Yelena, both seasoned spies, were skilled in socializing and conversation, ensuring that the evening never became awkward. Leon, with his usual calm and friendly demeanor, contributed to the lively discussion, keeping everything smooth and lighthearted. The atmosphere was warm and enjoyable until Alexei drank too much. In his drunken state, he tried to arm wrestle Leon, insisting on showing off his strength. It only added to how much everyone liked Leon. After dinner, Melina and Natasha headed to the kitchen to wash the dishes, while Alexei passed out on the sofa. Yelena, still full of energy, excitedly bombarded Leon with questions. Except for a few secrets, Leon didn't hold back, sharing a lot with her. Yelena was quite satisfied with Leon's answers, even though she noticed he was holding back on some details. However, being smart, she knew better than to press further. Apart from Alexei, the whole family had top-tier emotional intelligence. After chatting with the family for a while longer, Leon politely declined the offer to stay overnight. Instead, he activated the micro-wormhole transportation technology to leave. Natasha, though momentarily surprised, didn't dwell on it too much. She just felt that Leon carried more secrets than he let on, a sense of mystery that only made people want to dig deeper. Upon returning to New York Manor, Leon's quiet arrival went unnoticed by the maids, who were still working. Inside the house, Sergei and the kids were out, and Leon didn't worry too much. With Kessia's constant monitoring, any threat would be quickly detected, though few on Earth posed a real danger to them. After a good meal, Leon settled into a balcony chair in the calm of the evening, sipping coffee and gazing up at the stars. The quiet and harmony of the night made him feel truly at peace. Leon enjoyed moments like this, quiet and relaxing. In his previous life as an office worker, the constant pressure to secure a house, marriage, and financial stability had made life stressful. Even after coming to this world, he'd had to constantly plan and struggle to survive, especially with a group of children depending on him. Every step was a challenge. Now that the Maximoff twins, Sergei, and the others had grown up, and with the Sky Blade No. 7, an angelic origin space battleship that seemed like a glitch in the universe, Leon could finally relax, at least to some extent. However, he was fully aware that in a world filled with gods and multiverse-level threats, an unexpected crisis could come at any time. He knew his strength wasn't enough to handle some of the major events or cataclysmic forces out there. So, he still needed to grow stronger, but at least for now, he had the confidence to enjoy some peace and quiet. Ironically, that peace didn't last long. While he gazed at the stars, casually sipping his coffee, his body suddenly tensed as Keisha's voice echoed in his ear. Detecting space fluctuations outside Earth. Energy disturbance from another dimension, Keisha reported. Leon stood up abruptly, placing his coffee cup on the table. He looked up at the sky, his eyes flashing with concern. Even without Keisha's warning, he had already sensed the fleeting presence of a terrifying aura of power filled with darkness, death, and evil. It was a force far beyond his current abilities. Such a dark, immense power, but it disappeared so quickly. Leon frowned and asked, Keisha, what's the energy intensity? In terms of this universe's power scale, it's at the Skyfather level. Join P-Trian if you want P-Trian Com, GreekGreenGlass Chapter 13 Chapter 61 to Chapter 65 Skyfather level. That term immediately brought a name to Leon's mind. Keisha, send me the captured footage, he commanded. Yes, it has been transferred. Boom. In his mind, a series of memory images appeared. The scene showed the vast, black vacuum of space with Earth floating quietly in the distance. Suddenly, the space around the planet rippled violently, waves spreading out like shockwaves. Cirrus clouds, swirling in dark colors black, purple, and green appeared out of nowhere. But in the next second, there was a sound like shattering glass, and the swirling mass of energy vanished instantly, leaving the area calm once more. It was as if nothing had ever happened. But Leon knew better, this was no illusion. As Keisha froze the frame, Leon saw a figure, a bald woman in a yellow mage's robe, holding a folding fan. She appeared and vanished along with the cirrus cloud. The sight of her confirmed Leon's suspicions. The Ancient One, the Sorcerer Supreme, guardian of Earth for thousands of years. In the dark, sinister presence could only mean one thing: Dormammu, ruler of the dark dimension. It was clear now. Dormammu had attempted to break into this universe, only to be dragged into the mirror dimension by the Ancient One. Keisha, can you track them? Leon asked. Yes, I can send you into the mirror dimension using micro-wormhole technology, Keisha replied. However, the energy there at the moment is extremely intense and chaotic. The captain's physical body may not withstand it. If needed, you can deploy the module defense barrier using Sky Blade, but doing so will alert the participants. Keisha's ethereal voice echoed in Leon's mind as he contemplated his next move. If possible, he wanted to witness the battle firsthand. Observing the fight would give him a clearer sense of how wide the gap was between his current power and that of the Skyfather level. But doing so would almost certainly draw the attention of both Dormammu and the Ancient One. Dormammu was one thing Leon could deal with being noticed by him, but the Supreme Sorcerer's reaction was what really concerned him. Who knows, perhaps even Odin might notice the disturbance. Leon's eyes flickered with determination. After a moment of thought, he asked, Keisha, can the Sky Blade No. 7 support me in launching a god-level strike in that dimension? Absolutely, Keisha responded. That's all I need. Send me there. Yes. As soon as Keisha's words faded, Leon's figure disappeared from the rooftop in an instant. When his vision cleared, he found himself in a world unlike anything he had seen before, a different dimension altogether. The world around him was bathed in dark, suffocating hues of black, purple, and green. The atmosphere felt oppressive, filled with a sense of evil and terror that weighed heavily on his chest. But Leon's gaze was locked far ahead, where the real horror unfolded. In the distance, a colossal head, made of swirling black energy, spanned tens of millions of kilometers. It emanated an aura of dread so intense, it bordered on despair. The slightest movement of the surrounding dark clouds caused massive ripples that swept across the dimension like a black torrent, threatening to destroy everything in its path. And in front of this massive, terrifying presence was a lone figure, a woman in a yellow mage's robe, her head covered by a hood. She floated in midair, her hands weaving intricate golden magic arrays that shimmered with unimaginable power. These mystical shields clashed fiercely with the dark energy, creating shockwaves that rocked the entire dimension. The sheer force of the battle made the dimension tremble, as if it were on the verge of collapsing. Leon floated at a distance, shielded by a honeycomb-like defense barrier generated by Sky Blade No. 7. The barrier absorbed the energy blasts that washed over him, keeping him safe from the cataclysmic forces in front of him. Recording all data and beginning analysis, Keisha's voice echoed in his mind, pulling Leon from his shock. As he stared at the titanic battle unfolding before his eyes, he was struck speechless by the sheer scale of it. This was a conflict at the Skyfather level, far beyond anything he had ever encountered. The energy emanating from the battle was powerful enough to obliterate a planet. At this level of combat, not only would ordinary mortals be instantly annihilated, but even Leon himself found difficult to just observe. His ability to manipulate elements gave him near invulnerability on a physical level, but the powers at play here were operating on an entirely different scale, manipulating the very fabric of reality. The vast torrents of energy could easily disintegrate him in an instant. Despite this, the defensive barriers supported by Sky Blade No. 7 were holding strong, shielding him from the destructive forces surrounding him. This is the Skyfather level, Leon thought. The gap between his current power and this monumental scale was clear, and yet, feeling the battle's intensity firsthand filled him with excitement. He realized why beings like the Ancient One scarcely bothered with the affairs of the mortal world. It was beneath their concern. As Leon silently observed the clash between the Ancient One and Dormammu, something shifted. Both combatants paused, as if by mutual agreement. Across the vast distance of dozens of kilometers, the Ancient One turned her head, her hooded gaze settling on Leon. A flash of surprise flickered in her eyes. It's him, how is he able to appear in the mirror dimension? And that energy, it's unusual, she mused. From the other side, Dormammu's deep, reverberating voice echoed throughout the dimension. Oh, another human, but so weak, as insignificant as an ant. The Ancient One looked back at Leon, her voice speaking directly into his mind, Mr. Leon, you are not ready to face power of this level. Leave now. Dormammu has noticed you. Leon's eyes widened in response, just as Dormammu's wild laughter erupted through the void. Ha ha ha, a mere human, daring to step into this realm. Your courage and talent are commendable, but it's a pity you must die here. Boom. An explosion of dark, malevolent energy erupted, sending a devastating wave of darkness crashing toward Leon. The sheer magnitude of the dark torrent, blotting out the sky, was almost suffocating, a force so overwhelming it seemed to bring with it pure despair. The Ancient One remained calm, her expression steady as she prepared to intervene against Dormammu's attack. But then, her eyes widened in sudden surprise. She saw Leon's lips curl into a slight smile as he raised his right hand. Keisha, activate flare bombing. Boom. Instantly, an intense, searing energy gathered above Leon's palm. The power was like a miniature star created with the help of his glint fruit, blazing with a radiant heat that dispelled the consuming darkness in the dimension. The energy rippled outward, and the star Leon had summoned stretched for millions of kilometers in diameter, its heat so extreme that it warped the very fabric of space around it. As part of the advanced angelic civilization, Sky Blade No. 7 was equipped with fundamental star drive technology, and flare bombing was a powerful manifestation of that technology. The remote control harnessed the power of a star to create a flare bombardment, an attack of unimaginable power. Supported by Sky Blade No. 7, Leon swung his right hand forward. Boom. In an instant, the entire sky turned red as a torrent of red energy exploded outward. The devastating force engulfed the dark energy unleashed by Dormammu, evaporating it on contact. The explosion swallowed every trace of darkness. Ancient One's eyes narrowed as she sensed the danger. She quickly rendered her form illusory, severing the connection between the mirror dimension and the real world. Dormammu, who had dismissed Leon as insignificant, was caught completely off guard by the sheer force of the flare bombardment. His massive form, once composed of dark energy, was consumed by the explosion. Impossible. You're just a human, how could you wield such power? Dormammu's thunderous voice echoed as the mirror dimension itself began to shatter under the weight of the attack. Leon watched as Dormammu's energy-based head disintegrated in the blast, forcing the Dark Lord back into his own dimension. Crack, crack. The mirror dimension, now unstable, began to fracture and collapse. Realizing this, Leon swiftly activated the micro-wormhole transportation technology and vanished from the crumbling world. In a flash, he reappeared on the rooftop of his manor. Keisha, he called out. The combat module has been recorded. Unknown magic systems and dark magic detected, Keisha responded. Estimated analysis time, 13 days. Leon smiled, satisfied. This encounter had been more rewarding than he expected. The most valuable prize was Sky Blade's ability to record and analyze the Ancient One's mystical magic and Dormammu's dark sorcery. Once fully analyzed, it would be ready for his use. Even though the magic of the Vishanti is notorious in the mystical world, like dealing with loan sharks, it can't be denied that many spells within this system are incredibly useful. Take the mirror dimension, for instance, it's a key skill for dealing with enemies discreetly. The strength of angelic civilization lies in its ability to absorb the best attributes and systems from various civilizations through recording and analysis, constantly optimizing itself. The star drive technology of Merlot Star is a prime example. Sky Blade No. 7 integrated this by studying and learning from their advancements. As Leon stood reflecting, a gentle voice spoke from behind. Mr. Leon, I hope you don't mind me dropping by. Leon wasn't surprised. Turning around, he saw the Ancient One standing there. Smiling, he gestured for her to sit. Ancient One, please, have a seat. Without hesitation, the Ancient One sat on one of the balcony chairs. A small tea table appeared between them as Leon lightly tapped the surface, conjuring 2 glasses of juice. I apologize, Ancient One. I don't have tea here, only juice. The Ancient One smiled softly. Juice is rich in vitamins and very healthy. The Ancient One removed her hood, revealing a weary expression. She didn't seem bothered, though. She picked up her glass and took a sip, blinking softly as she met Leon's gaze. After a brief silence, she spoke softly, Mr. Leon, you have surprised me. How so? Leon asked, glancing unconsciously at the glowing green gem necklace, the Eye of Agamotto, hanging on her chest. Since you left that test base, I've noticed that the established flow of history has taken an unexpected turn, the Ancient One said, her eyes focused on Leon. A few years ago, she had sensed a sudden shift in the course of history while at Kamar Taj. This unsettled her, as she had long been able to glimpse into the future and maintain the Earth's protection by ensuring that events stayed on their destined path. But Leon's presence and the arrival of his companions had thrown this delicate balance into disarray. The Ancient One explained that history had now veered off course at 3 significant points, and with each divergence, the changes were becoming more profound. Most recently, the timeline had been affected so dramatically that the future had become fragmented and uncertain. Leon was the focal point of this upheaval. Listening closely, Leon quickly understood that the 3 points the Ancient One referred to were tied directly to his sign-in rewards, the glint-glint fruit, the breathing technique, and, most notably, Sky Blade No. 7. The first 2 had created relatively minor ripples in the timeline, as their powers, while significant, had limited long-term impact. However, the acquisition of Sky Blade No. 7 was a different story entirely. With the Skyfather-level combat power it granted, and its advanced technology far beyond the Earth's current capabilities, Leon now possessed the ability to gather and enhance himself with the genes and technologies of other civilizations. This meant his potential for growth had become nearly limitless. As a result, the disruption to the future was much greater than the Ancient One had anticipated. From the Ancient One's perspective, the future was now fragmented, and although she could sense the changes Leon had caused, she couldn't fully see why or how he had triggered them. Leon, of course, wasn't about to explain it to her. The Ancient One understood this well and didn't press him further. Especially after witnessing the power Leon had just displayed, she realized he was now someone she had to treat as an equal. Strength, after all, is the ultimate measure of everything. If before she had been merely observing him, now she had to acknowledge him on equal footing. What was that being earlier? Leon asked, though he already knew the answer. As expected, the Ancient One answered readily, he hails from a realm called the Dark Dimension. His ambition is to devour all worlds, turning them into sources of darkness so that he can transcend the multiverse and become eternal. She paused briefly before continuing, our universe is just one of his targets. We've been fighting against him for thousands of years. Leon questioned. Yes, the Ancient One confirmed. For millennia, sorcerers have guarded this world from the shadows, fending off those with ambitions to consume it. Leon nodded, genuinely moved. The Ancient One and all sorcerers truly deserve respect. He meant it. No matter their intentions, their actions spoke volumes. The Ancient One and the other sorcerers had been risking their lives to protect the Earth from the monstrous threats that sought to conquer it, and that was worthy of admiration. The Vishanti's system of magic is notoriously difficult to master, essentially a form of magical, loan sharking. Upon death, the sorcerer's soul and magic are often reclaimed by the mystical entities. Whether or not all sorcerers are aware of this isn't clear, but it's undeniable that many have sacrificed their lives for this power. Leon nodded thoughtfully, his expression sincere. The Ancient One noticed and gave him a subtle nod in return. Although I'm surprised by how much you've grown, I am pleased, she said gently. However, now that you've caught Dormammu's attention, his cultists may cause you trouble. Dormammu's dark presence naturally attracts followers, people who are lured into darkness, seduced by its power. These loyal cultists worship Dormammu, believing the world is corrupt and only he can purify it. They are convinced that by serving him, they can gain eternal life and all the rewards they desire. Essentially, they are brainwashed. Leon knew this well. He was also aware that among the masters of the mystic arts, an order of dark sorcerers known as zealots had formed, secretly working against the order in hopes of bringing Dormammu to Earth. Most of these zealots were sorcerers nearing the end of their lives or those lacking strong resolve. However, once they embraced darkness and tapped into its power, they became ruthless, doing anything necessary to allow Dormammu's arrival and eliminate any who stood in their way. Leon posed a particular threat to Dormammu. For thousands of years, the Ancient One and the Sanctums had prevented Dormammu's entry into this world. Now, a new figure, Leon, who held the potential to reach Skyfather level power, was on the rise. Dormammu's attempt to kill Leon in the mirror dimension was no just an act of rage, but a calculated move to stop Leon from growing too powerful. Leon listened carefully to the Ancient One's warning, but his thoughts went in a different direction. Rather than merely defending himself, Leon had already begun considering how to eliminate the threat at its root. Leon wasn't the type to wait for trouble to come knocking at his door. If he sensed any threat or potential danger, he preferred to eliminate it before it could grow. This approach had rubbed off on Sergei and others around him. They had come to adopt this ruthless mentality as well. While Leon's thoughts were already racing ahead to the idea of tracking down and wiping out the Dark Sorcerer's order, he still responded calmly to the Ancient One. "I'll keep an eye out for them. And if they do show up, I'll deal with them." The Ancient One smiled faintly. The premise being that they managed to reach you first. She didn't know exactly what Leon was thinking, but his cautious expression reassured her. Though Leon's methods were unconventional, his ability to unleash Skyfather-level power was undeniable. The threat posed by the Dark Sorcerer's order might not be as great as initially feared. After their brief conversation, the Ancient One took her leave. Before departing, she kindly invited Leon to visit Kamar Taj when he had time, offering to share a special tea de Hong Pao brought by Master Yupin from the east. Leon accepted the invitation, though his true interest lay more in Kamar Taj's vast library of knowledge. Once the Ancient One was gone, Leon vanished from the rooftop and reappeared in the Grand Hall of the Sky Blade No. 7 battleship, also known as the Immortal Palace. The hall was magnificent, its floor adorned with intricate circular patterns that depicted an epic battle. In the design, a beautiful angel wielded a flaming sword, leading an army against formidable enemies. Keisha's holographic figure materialized before him. "Captain Leon," she greeted. "How's it going?" Leon asked, getting straight to the point. Keisha remained calm, waving her hand to reveal an image that resembled a holographic projection, but far more realistic. The image displayed a glowing green gem, the very one sealed on the Ancient One's chest. It was the Eye of Agamotto, containing the Time Stone. The Time Stone held immense power, capable of controlling the past, present, and future. It could manipulate time in all its forms, accelerate, reverse, travel through it, and even trap someone in a time loop. The stone could also freeze timelines and alter reality with near omniscience. But those who tampered with its powers risked unimaginable torment, trapped within time until they could create a perfect moment, which would then exist for eternity. "I'm sorry, Captain Leon," Keisha said. "When we tried to record the gem's properties, it was blocked by an unknown force. Cracking it will take more time than anticipated." "Just as I thought," Leon muttered to himself, unsurprised by the results. The Time Stone, hidden within the Eye of Agamotto, was crafted by ancient sorcerers as both a container and a protective barrier. This powerful artifact could only be unlocked by the specific spells known to the Supreme Sorcerer. Even with Sky Blade No. 7's advanced capabilities, which allowed it to peer through the dark matter plane and observe the essence of things, it wasn't enough to full penetrate the magical defenses of the Eye of Agamotto, at least not right away. "While we couldn't gain direct insight, I can sense that this gem holds extremely unique rules and immense power, affecting the fabric of the real world itself," Keisha reported. Leon nodded, his gaze fixed on the projection of the green gem in front of him. "That's right. These gems hold the most powerful forces in the universe. When brought together, their combined energy is beyond comprehension." He stared at the hologram, eyes gleaming with fascination. Infinity stones, each one held almost limitless energy and unique properties related to time, space, reality, and more. Through Sky Blade No. 7, Leon could analyze the essence of these stones, potentially integrating their characteristics into the technology of the angelic civilization. It was a golden opportunity for optimization and advancement. Mastering the Infinity Stone's powers would be a tremendous feat. Even if it took time, it would result in technologies that could reshape entire worlds. And Leon knew that the ultimate prize, gathering all 6 Infinity Stones, would lead to untold power, worth any struggle or conflict. With Sky Blade No. 7's computing power, it was entirely possible to trace the stones' origins and adapt their properties. Leon stood to benefit immensely, but one thing was clear: this would inevitably lead to a confrontation with a certain Purple Potato, who fancied himself a cosmic enforcer of balance. Leon smirked at the thought of Thanos. "Looks like I'll have to find an opportunity to kill that guy," Leon mused. "And while I'm at it, maybe I'll take the Eternals, genes too, those would be useful." On a Texas highway, a sudden downpour flooded the dark Texas night. The rain fell hard, splashing against the ground with sharp, rhythmic beats. The once oppressive heat began to cool as the storm raged on, turning the dry, desolate land near the highway into a blurry, rain-soaked landscape. In the middle of it all, a red pickup truck roared down the road, its headlights cutting through the storm like the glowing eyes of a dragon. Inside, the soothing tones of Hotel California drifted through the speakers, the classic guitar melody blending with the sound of the rain, creating a peaceful yet haunting atmosphere. Pietro was at the wheel, driving lazily with one hand. His elbow rested against the window, chin propped on the back of his hand as he tilted his head slightly, his pose almost effortlessly cool. Though he'd never admit it, he was imitating Leon. He'd seen his boss drive like this several times before, looking flawlessly handsome from every angle, especially in profile. It was a look Pietro tried to emulate, though at this moment, there was no one to admire it. Wanda sat in the passenger seat beside him, dressed in tight black leather pants and white sneakers. Her long legs stretched out in front of her, resting on the dashboard. With a baseball cap pulled low, she scrolled through her phone, looking entirely disinterested. In the backseat, a figure lay stretched out, but in the darkness, they were barely visible. Still over 100 kilometers left, Pietro groaned, glancing at the GPS. The glowing map showed they still had 137 kilometers to go, and his mood darkened. He had already been driving for 3 hours since dinner, and it looked like they still had over 2 more to go. Bored and exhausted, he sighed, wondering how much longer he could endure the monotony. Pietro glanced at the person sleeping peacefully in the backseat, and his frustration flaring. How is this guy sleeping through all this? He clenched his jaw, fighting the urge to pick up the entire truck and sprint the rest of the way himself. Still no sign of him? He asked, exasperated. Wanda, still scrolling through her phone, replied calmly, don't worry. He's probably just enjoying the city like a tourist. According to social media, he's still there, as long as he hasn't skipped town. She absent-mindedly pulled a lollipop from her sweater pocket and popped it into her mouth, her eyes never leaving the screen. That guy really knows how to disappear, Pietro grumbled. Too bad we don't have Natasha backing us up this time. Finding their target wasn't about brute force, it was about tracking him down first. Dark creatures like him had a knack for staying hidden, and sometimes they even had the help of official agencies covering things up to avoid causing mass panic. Traditional methods wouldn't work, they couldn't just walk in and demand answers. What they needed was hacking, something Natasha excelled at. Over the years, Pietro and Wanda had picked up some basic skills, enough to hack into street surveillance or access local police networks. But those networks usually had firewalls that were tough to crack. Natasha, though, she was on a whole different level. Her hacking skills were top tier, and with her enhanced body and mind, she'd gotten even better. She could easily break through the toughest defenses, acting as their secret weapon on missions like this. But Natasha wasn't here. She was off reconnecting with her family. Pietro sighed. Another day of missing Natasha. The pickup truck sped down the highway, splashing through the muddy, rain-soaked road. It was dangerously slick, and the truck could easily skid off course if Pietro wasn't careful. But, as usual, he didn't care, pushing the limits of control with his foot firmly on the gas. If the truck ever came close to flipping over, Pietro could instantly react with his super speed. From his perspective, everything around him would slow down by 100-fold, allowing him to make corrections with ease. The tires spun rapidly on the slick, uneven ground, spraying water into the air. The surroundings were shrouded in darkness, with heavy rain misting the air and filling their lungs with dampness. Both Pietro and Wanda had a fondness for rainy and snowy days. It reminded them of their time together in the Ural Mountains, where they grew up. There, it seemed to rain or snow endlessly, and they would often sit outside their wooden cabin, lulled to sleep by the rhythms of nature. Now, as Hotel California played in the truck, Pietro swayed slightly to the music while Wanda, with a lollipop in her mouth, scrolled through her phone, focused on reading the latest news. Time seemed to drag on as they drove, the road mostly deserted. But as they passed a road sign, something shifted. Both Pietro and Wanda's heads snapped up simultaneously, and the person who had been napping in the backseat sat up, alert and tense. His youthful face was shadowed, giving him a somber look. Pietro pressed down on the brake pedal, gradually slowing the pickup truck. It rolled forward for another 100, maybe 200 meters, before coming to a full stop. Boom! A bolt of lightning tore through the sky, lighting up the dark world in a flash. Thunder roared overhead, the sounds overlapping in, creating an eerie atmosphere. The heavy downpour slammed against the truck's roof, each drop like a barrage of bullets. The headlights illuminated the dirt road ahead as the truck stood still on the highway. Not far behind them, a green billboard loomed in the distance, barely visible through the curtain of rain. In the car, Wanda and Pietro both frowned, scanning the area through the front windshield, the side windows, and even the rearview mirror as if searching for something. From the backseat, Sumarokov leaned forward into the light, his face emerging from the shadows. Glancing left and right, he muttered, "What the hell? I can't see anything, not a trace. What are we dealing with? Yeah, it's strange. The three of us are on high alert, and we still don't see a thing," Pietro said from the driver's seat. He leaned forward against the steering wheel, his eyes darting around cautiously. "Feels like something's locked onto us." Wanda, still holding her phone, closed the page she was on and tucked it into her pocket. She leaned against the window, unfazed by the rain dripping onto the brim of her cap. Turning slightly, she looked behind them. A few kilometers away, an RV was slowly making its way down the road. Tilting her head, she rested her chin on her arm and whispered, "Someone's coming." Not long after, a white, medium-sized RV pulled up behind the pickup truck. When it came to a stop, the driver switched on the hazard lights. While parking on the highway, especially in heavy rain, is against traffic regulations. In the desolate stretches of Texas, where a vehicle might not pass for hours, the rules were more flexible. Honk, honk. The sound of a car horn pierced the rain. A young boy leaned out of the RV's window, waving enthusiastically. "Hey guys, did your car break down? Need some help?" he shouted over the storm. Inside the RV, several girls poked their heads out through the windows, shielding themselves from the rain and curiously peeking over at the pickup truck. "Wow, what a nice group of people," Pietro muttered to himself, his eyes flickering with a mix of surprise and appreciation. Having been a wanderer for much of his life and later enduring harsh experiences at the experimental base, he understood the risks of stopping to help strangers in a remote area, especially in this weather. Yet, the boy had done just that. There was no malice in his voice or actions, and Pietro, with his heightened awareness, could sense the boy's genuine kindness. That kind of goodness shouldn't just vanish in a place like this, Pietro thought, a cold light flashing briefly in his eyes. He exchanged a glance with Wanda, who nodded slightly. Pietro leaned out of the window and called back, "Hey man, you're right, our car broke down. Could really use a hand." "Wow, that's rough. This weather's been crazy. Luckily, our RV's got a tow hook. We can pull your car if you need," the red-haired boy shouted back, eager to help. Pietro immediately responded, "Thanks a lot, man, you're really an angel." The boy laughed, "Haha, yeah, I'll be your angel tonight." Clearly a social butterfly, the boy showed no shyness or caution toward strangers. After responding enthusiastically to Pietro, he the gas, maneuvered the RV in front of the pickup, and stepped out into the rain with an umbrella. The side door of the RV opened, and 3 women and 1 man followed him out, all young and of varying heights. The girls were strikingly attractive, each holding an umbrella. Seeing them approach, Pietro, Wanda, and Sumarokov got out of their pickup as well, umbrellas in hand. The first meeting between both groups went smoothly. Wanda's flawless figure and stunning features, along with Pietro and Sumarokov's handsome looks and visibly toned muscles beneath their short sleeves, made a good impression. The curly-haired boy initially inspected the pickup but decided that, with the heavy rain, it was easier to just tow the truck rather than investigate the problem. He hopped back into the RV's driver's seat, hooked up the tow line to the pickup's bumper, and stepped back out, clapping his hands, pleased with his handiwork. "All done," he said with a grin. "Hey, why don't you guys join us? We couldn't sleep anyway and we're planning to play some games. There's plenty of room in the RV." Pietro exchanged a glance with Wanda, who shrugged. "Sure, why not," Pietro said. "Yo-ho, that's awesome." The group cheered happily, splashing in the puddles. Watching this lively scene, Pietro, Wanda, and Sumarokov couldn't help but feel a sense of warmth. It was a moment that reminded them of family. Afterwards, Pietro and Wanda grabbed the large bags of snacks, drinks, and fruits they had bought and carried them from the pickup truck into the RV. Seeing all the food, the group of boys and girls inside the RV cheered excitedly. They were just a group of students and close friends who had decided a year ago to buy an RV and travel together during the holidays. To make it happen, they had saved money for a whole year, living frugally and working part-time jobs during their vacations. With a bit of financial help from their families, the 5 of them finally spent $80,000 on the RV, which included the custom interior they had designed together. The result was a space that reflected their youthful creativity. The RV was surprisingly spacious. Near the front, there was a foldable bed above a small TV that they had only kept because it was cheaper to leave it in rather than replace it. They also used a projector for watching movies. At the back of the RV was a large bed big enough for all 5 of them, along with a shower, toilet, and a small kitchen. In the middle of the RV were 2 rows of seats and a spot for their computers. The 2 boys were Jeff, the curly-haired and enthusiastic driver, and Adam. The 3 girls, from tallest to shortest, were Lena, Siri, and Sylvia. The group of students were all from West Virginia, attending Marquette University. Pietro, Wanda, and Sumarokov pretended to be students from New York University. Since everyone was young, lively, and full of energy and with plenty of snacks and drinks to go around, the atmosphere inside the RV quickly became fun and cheerful. They played various small games, which helped them bond even more. At one point, the 3 girls surrounded Wanda, hugging her and occasionally brushing their cheeks against hers, acting like close friends. Adam, one of the boys, couldn't help but feel a pang of envy. He had developed a crush on Wanda the moment he saw her, but with the presence of Pietro and Sumarokov both strikingly handsome, he kept his feelings to himself. As the RV continued down the highway, towing the pickup truck behind it, the sound of laughter and playful banter filled the vehicle. But amidst the fun, Wanda, Pietro, and Sumarokov remained on alert. There was still an unknown and mysterious threat lingering in the background, though they hadn't been able to detect it yet. Sumarokov, sitting near the window, appeared to be enjoying the games with the group, but his sharp eyes kept scanning the surroundings outside. Pietro, sitting nearby, quietly muttered to Wanda, "That thing is really patient." "We're not far from the city," Wanda whispered back. "It'll definitely make a move soon. Stay ready." "Yeah," Pietro nodded. "Join Patreon if y'all want. Patreon.com, GreekGreenGlass. Chapter 14 Chapter 66 to Chapter 77 The heavy rain outside didn't dampen the mood inside the RV. The three girls huddled close to Wanda, playfully clinging to her as they chatted and played games. Inevitably, their conversation shifted toward Pietro and Sumarokov, their intentions pretty clear. Wanda didn't mind sharing some details like their personalities and interests, which made the girls even more excited. Meanwhile, Adam, the boy wearing glasses, felt a twinge of jealousy. Why were those two guys getting all the attention? Was it just because they were taller, more muscular, and better looking? He huffed to himself, a man's greatest asset is his depth of character. Suddenly, a loud thunderclap split the sky, its explosive roar echoing like a warning drum. The three girls shuddered, caught off guard. For a moment, they even considered using their fear as an excuse to throw themselves into the arms of Pietro or Sumarokov, imagining a romantic scenario. But then, the RV's interior lights began flickering erratically, as if something was wrong with the wiring. An odd, chilly breeze swept through the space, sending a shiver down everyone's spine. Sylvia, the blonde girl who loved watching horror movies but was easily scared, almost screamed in fright. Her face showed genuine fear as she clung tightly to Wanda. Sensing the girl's fear, Wanda, like a protective older sister, wrapped her arms around Sylvia and whispered soothing words, her eyes briefly glowing with a soft red light. Pietro and Sumarokov exchanged glances, their gazes sharpening as they turned to the flickering lights, both on high alert. As Jeff drove the RV, he suddenly gasped in surprise, and the vehicle started slowing down. "Hey, why is there someone standing in the middle of the road?" The moment Jeff spoke, a cold glint flashed in the eyes of Wanda, Pietro, and Sumarokov. Instantly alert, the three of them stood up and moved to the front of the RV. Through the windshield and the glare of the high beams, they saw what Jeff was talking about. In the middle of the road stood an old man, dressed in a black suit coat, with a round hat on his head, white gloves, and holding a cane in one hand and a black umbrella in the other. He looked like an old-fashioned aristocrat. There didn't seem to be anything particularly threatening about him, yet his presence in the middle of this deserted highway, during a storm, felt deeply unsettling. The others in the RV came forward to get a better look. Sylvia, wide-eyed, asked in surprise, "What's an old man doing out here? Didn't we read online that this road is practically abandoned? Maybe his vehicle broke down just like Wanda," one of the other girls suggested. Being naturally friendly and optimistic, the students quickly accepted this explanation. After all, hadn't they just stopped to help Wanda, Pietro, and Sumarokov? It didn't seem that strange. Jeff was even about to roll down the window to call out to the man, but Sumarokov quickly placed a firm hand on his shoulder. When Jeff turned to him, confused, Sumarokov spoke with a serious tone. "Listen, stay inside the car. Don't go out there. If anything feels off, leave immediately." "Wait," Jeff began to ask something, but before he could finish, Sumarokov, Pietro, and Wanda had already opened the door and stepped out into the pouring rain, leaving the group of students puzzled. The downpour soaked the road as Wanda walked in the middle, flanked by Pietro and Sumarokov, each holding an umbrella. Their shoes splashed through the muddy water, creating small ripples as they approached the old man standing in the middle of the road. Inside the RV, Jeff and the others huddled around the front, watching through the high beams. The sight of Wanda, Pietro, and Sumarokov moving toward the old man stirred an odd feeling among them. There was something mysterious about their backs, something that sent a shiver down their spines. The trio stopped about 5 meters from the old man, who looked at them with a gentle, wrinkled face. The rain drummed on the umbrellas, but his gaze remained calm. "Such an interesting soul," the old man said, his voice full of intrigue. "I didn't expect to meet a host of chaos magic here, fascinating." At his words, Wanda, Pietro, and Sumarokov's eyes narrowed. Chaos magic, he had recognized it instantly. Their expressions grew serious. They silently extended their heightened senses, using their haki, probing the old man's presence. What they felt was unlike anything they had encountered before, an aura that felt otherworldly, as if it existed in a different dimension, detached from the world around them. But there was something inexplicably terrifying about him. "Who are you?" Wanda asked, her voice soft, nearly drowned out by the rain. Yet the old man heard her clearly. He responded calmly, unhurriedly, "Someone who can fulfill people's deepest wishes." His voice took on a bewitching tone. "You all have tragic pasts, don't you? Would you like to make a deal with me? If you sign a contract, I can give you anything you desire, anything, including reuniting you with your family." The old man's words carried a dangerous allure. Wanda, Pietro, and Sumarokov all reacted immediately. His offer was tempting. The thought of seeing their parents again, of undoing the pain they had lived through, stirred something deep within them. Yet, over the years, they had grown stronger. They had learned to move forward despite their traumas. And now, their senses screamed that something was wrong with the old man's proposal. There was a raw malice emanating from him, undisguised and pure. Wanda's gaze hardened. As much as she longed to see her parents again, the malevolent presence before them couldn't be trusted. This was no ordinary negotiation. It was a fight they couldn't avoid. In an instant, Pietro's figure blurred, vanishing before reappearing with his weapon in hand. Sumarokov's golden swords were already strapped to his back. The old man's once calm expression darkened as he saw how quickly they prepared for battle. Sumarokov cracked his neck, a wild grin spreading across his face. Whatever you are, drop the act. It is impossible for you to hide the malice in your eyes. He inhaled deeply, drawing in the heavy, damp air. Let's get this over with. With a powerful kick, the ground beneath Sumarokov shattered, sending water splashing in all directions as he charged at the old man with blinding speed. We might be able to pass. In the main hall of Sky Blade Immortal Palace, Leon and Keisha were in the middle of a conversation when Keisha suddenly paused. Turning to look at Leon, she spoke softly, Captain Leon, according to Sky Blade's real-time monitoring, Wanda, Pietro, and Sumarokov have encountered a powerful, unknown enemy. Do you want to use the micro-wormhole technology? Is it urgent? They're in the middle of a battle, Keisha replied, her eyes gleaming with divine light. In an instant, the entire hall transformed. What was once a radiant and holy space became dark, as heavy rain poured from the sky, drenching the surroundings. The ground turned muddy, filled with water, and on a desolate road rarely trodden by anyone, an extraordinary battle raged. On this muddy road, an RV was parked, towing a pickup truck. About 100 meters ahead, illuminated by high beams, a strong young man wearing a brown coat, with 2 golden swords on his back, was locked in combat with an old man, moving at a speed too fast for the normal human eye to follow. Leon and Keisha stood near the RV, observing the fight. Not far from Leon, Wanda and Pietro watched on. Leon gave Keisha a thumbs up, acknowledging her use of micro-wormhole transport technology paired with mirror dimension space magic. In such a brief time, she had recorded, analyzed, and applied the needed tools to transport them. The Sky Blade truly operated at a godly level. Within the mirror dimension, which isolated them from the real world but allowed them to witness its events, Leon watched Sumarokov battle the old man. He raised an eyebrow, intrigued. Keisha, can you identify the opponent? There's an unknown force blocking full recognition, Keisha said. But what I can tell is that the enemy isn't fully of this world, it's just a projection, a fragment of the soul from some unknown entity. Then I can pretty much guess where this old guy came from, Leon muttered. Keisha's words confirmed the identity of the old man, though Leon hadn't expected Wanda and the others to cross paths with him. Speaking of Wanda, she seemed to sense something. She suddenly turned her head, staring intently at the side of the RV where Leon and Keisha stood. Are there enemies? Pietro, noticing Wanda's actions, tensed up, ready for a fight. Wanda's eyes glowed red, like fiery gems. After a moment of intense focus, she slowly shook her head and turned back. Maybe it's just my imagination, she said softly. Even though she dismissed it, she exchanged a glance with Pietro, who remained on high alert. Watching this unfold, Leon nodded in approval. Wanda, naturally gifted in chaos magic, had an exceptional mental fortitude. After learning the breathing techniques, practicing observation hockey and armament hockey, and receiving the improved serum, her abilities had surpassed most others. She must have sensed something, but couldn't pinpoint it. If it had been anyone else, their attention would have wavered, but Wanda maintained her vigilance. Leon's teachings had clearly been ingrained deeply in both Wanda and Pietro. Vigilance always comes first. No matter where you are, it's essential to stay alert to anything unusual or out of place. Wait, what was that? Did I see it wrong? Unbelievable. The speed and power, they were moving so fast, I couldn't even see clearly. And that old man, who is he? Wow, is Sumarokov a mutant? That's incredible. Inside the RV, the passengers had their faces pressed against the windshield or were leaning out the side windows, eyes wide with awe. They were whispering excitedly about the superhuman battle unfolding before them, with no hint of fear or unease. Leon glanced at them with amusement. Boom! A deafening roar shook the ground. Sumarokov's right arm had completely transformed into jet black metal, and he unleashed a devastating punch. The old man blocked it with his staff, and sparks flew as metal clashed with wood. The raw force of the impact released a shockwave of hockey that rippled through the air, creating a vacuum-like space within a 10-meter radius. The road beneath them fractured, spiderweb cracks splitting the surface. Rainwater quickly seeped into the crevices, filling them. Despite blocking a punch that carried the force of dozens, if not hundreds, of tons, the old man's face remained calm and composed. The old man stared at Sumarokov with undisguised greed in his eyes. Such an interesting power, your soul is so delicious, I can hardly resist it. Sumarokov growled in response, his voice low and fierce. If you want my soul, you'll have to go to hell first. With a surge of strength, he flexed the muscles in his right hand and, using his unique power, unleashed another devastating punch. Boom! The impact was so powerful that the old man nearly lost his grip on his staff. Although he managed to hold on, the force still sent him hurtling back hundreds of meters. Tumbling through the air, an unseen energy halted his fall, and he hovered midair, suspended by an inexplicable force. The sudden stop created a powerful shockwave that blew away the pouring rain. Such fascinating strength, the old man sneered, his excitement growing. You make me crave your soul even more. From his vantage point above, the old man gazed down at Sumarokov, Wanda, and Pietro, who were staring up at him. His lips curled into a wicked smile as he spread his arms wide. Rumble. The sky erupted with thunder, and a terrifying aura surged from the old man. The darkness of the storm and the relentless rain seemed to mirror the oppressive energy radiating from him. The air itself felt heavy with despair and suffocation, as though the weight of the world was pressing down on them. His eyes transformed, no longer human, but resembling the demonic gaze of a being from the depths of hell. Even the rain seemed affected by the sinister force he exuded. "Did I see that right?" muttered Jeff, sitting uneasily in the driver's seat of the RV. The overwhelming pressure made him feel physically ill. Realizing just how close they were to the monstrous old man in Sumarokov, Jeff made a quick decision, slamming his foot on the accelerator and reversing the RV. The movement went unnoticed by Wanda, Pietro, and Sumarokov, all of whom were fixated on the maniacally grinning old man before them. Only Leon and Keisha noticed it. "This guy doesn't seem human," Wanda murmured, eyes glowing with a brighter red as she studied the old man amid the violent wind and rain. She turned decisively to Pietro. "Kill him. He's not ordinary." In Leon's family, there was no room for chivalry or mercy toward enemies. If someone posed a threat, no matter how worthy of respect, they had to die. If a group attack was the best option, they would take it unless the enemy was too weak to warrant it. As soon as Wanda spoke, she raised her hands. Boom! A surge of red energy exploded in every direction, whipping her hair and coat around her. She was enveloped in the crimson power of chaotic magic, radiating an almost divine presence. Like a scarlet goddess, she extended her hand toward the old man in the sky and clenched her fist. Instantly, the chaotic energy coalesced into two massive scarlet hands. Wanda knew from experience that once those hands closed around their target, escape was nearly impossible. She was confident the old man, no matter who he was, would meet the same fate. The old man sensed the danger. Despite his earlier arrogance, his cunning nature kept him wary. After all, this wasn't his real body, and he was operating at less than 1% of his true strength. Chaos magic posed a genuine threat. Whoosh! Just as the two scarlet hands lunged toward him, the old man vanished. He reappeared 100 meters away, behind Sumarokov, his gloved hand reaching out like a devil's claw toward Sumarokov's neck. But Sumarokov had already activated his observation haki. The moment the old man disappeared, Sumarokov sensed his move. In an instant, he twisted his waist, launching a powerful punch backward. His black gold fist collided hard with the old man's hand, sparks flying from the impact. Boom! The unimaginable force from the punch made the old man's expression shift, but he still managed to withstand it. The clash between their powers sent shockwaves outward, centering on them as the air erupted in a violent blast. The road beneath their feet cracked and caved in, sending a spray of gravel and rainwater flying in all directions. Although the old man had expected Sumarokov to be strong, this level of power exceeded even his previous expectations. With his vast experience, he quickly identified the technique Sumarokov used to generate such force and the strange, steel-like energy coursing through his arms. His eyes gleamed like a devil's, his pupils shrinking, and an unsettling grin crept onto his face. He leaned forward slightly, the pressure around him intensifying. "Such an intriguing power," the old man said, his voice dripping with mock curiosity. "In reactions beyond mere instinct. I'm curious. Care to share how you learned this?" Sumarokov's gaze sharpened, and he let out a cold snort. "Maybe I'll tell you after I crush your skull and sit back enjoying a fruit salad." Without hesitation, Sumarokov shifted his weight, stepping back with his right leg and removing the power from his right fist. In an explosive burst of strength, he launched another devastating blow, aiming straight for the old man's head. The old man, with agility that belied his age, dodged by leaning back just in time. With a swift counter, he swung his staff, aiming to strike Sumarokov's cheek. Sumarokov blocked it easily, and the two combatants immediately became locked in a brutal, close-quarters fight. Boom, boom, boom. Each punch and kick from the two combatants, both of whom possessed power far beyond human capability, was explosive. In the span of just 2 seconds, they collided with each other hundreds of times at speeds that were nearly impossible to follow with the naked eye. From hundreds of meters away, one could barely make out two figures darting back and forth on the road, moving at impossible speeds. Shockwaves exploded from their clashes, sending rippling circles of air that tore up the ground in a radius of thousands of meters. Pits of all sizes littered the terrain. Jeff and the group in the RV, now retreating to a safe distance, watched through high-precision night vision binoculars. Their expressions were frozen in disbelief, as if they were trapped in a surreal dream. "Damn, what am I seeing?" Jeff cried out, clutching his head in horror. "That old guy just flipped over 10 times in midair like a stuntman and jumped more than 10 meters in one leap. Is this even real?" He shook his head. "In Sumarokov, he's beating the crap out of that old man. Why did I invite him into the car? He's dangerous." "Come on, Jeff, quit joking. Let's figure out who's on the right side here," said Adam Chubbuck, another boy in the RV, rolling his eyes. He stroked his chin, feigning deep thought. "We don't know who that old guy is, but based on how Wanda's been acting, I'm pretty sure she's on the good side." "So that means the old man is the bad guy," Adam concluded. "OMG, groaned Siri, a girl in the group, covering her face at their oversimplified reasoning. "You call that an analysis?" Unexpectedly, Lena and Sylvia nodded in agreement. It makes sense to me, Lena said. Wanda, Pietro, and Sumarokov have been kind and gentle with us this whole time. If they can get along with us, they can't be bad people. Jeff shrugged. So now that we know who's good and bad, are we supposed to pull out the gun I got from my uncle and shoot the old man? Adam shook his head. Trust me, that won't work. Even if you manage to hit him, that guy is probably 100 times stronger than a rhino. His skin's gotta be impenetrable. Great, Jeff said, throwing up his hands. Are we seriously debating whether we can penetrate his skin? I say we back off another 1,000 meters. My dear Mr. Jeff, Lena interrupted, you're sitting in the driver's seat. Jeff snapped his fingers. That's why I respect you, Lena. Thanks, but what we need now is for you to actually drive. If we could back off half the planet, I'd be all for it. She urged. All right, I'm on it, Jeff grumbled as he started reversing the RV again. Hearing the playful chatter from inside the RV, Leon smirked. These kids are really optimistic. Keisha began to explain, based on human genetics and personality analysis, but Leon quickly cut her off. Okay, enough. The old guy's losing his patience. Whoosh. Golden arcs sliced through the night as black tattered fabric fluttered in the wind. The old man, standing at the edge of the road, frowned as he reached up and removed his black round hat now sliced in half. He let the ruined hat fall to the ground and turned his focus to the tall, muscular young man in front of him. In both of his hands, Sumarokov held two blades, connected by chains, with red handles and golden swords gleaming ominously. Before the old man could speak, he noticed something strange. The air around him was filled with a red, chaotic energy. In the distance, a figure was hurtling toward him at supersonic speed. The target was clear, him. Before he could react, Pietro's fist collided with his face with a deafening boom, like thunder erupting in the night. The sheer force of the blow distorted the old man's skin, and his body was sent spiraling backward uncontrollably. Waiting for him in midair was Sumarokov. Inhaling deeply, his muscles tensed as he gripped the twin blades. With a flash of golden steel, he swung the swords in an intricate cross pattern. The old man's body flew straight into it, and in an instant, his form disintegrated, shattered into thousands of tiny pieces. Sumarokov had swung his blades thousands of times in a second, effortlessly slicing the old man apart. As the pieces of the old man's body scattered across the wet ground, Pietro, having just unleashed his sonic punch, shook his head. That was brutal. Sumarokov grinned. My double sword technique isn't for the faint of heart. Anyone witnessing such a scene would be filled with terror. Swinging a blade thousands of times in a single second is beyond human capability. Even Wolverine, with his regenerative powers, would be reduced to shredded flesh by Sumarokov's relentless strikes. If Sergei was a well-rounded warrior, Sumarokov was a genius in his own right, with talents that far exceeded even Sergei's. His speed and extraordinary hearing set him apart. Sumarokov's hearing was far superior to ordinary people, allowing him to develop a unique combat-style sound breathing. His technique was perfectly tailored to his abilities, rivaling even the famous thunder breathing in power, perhaps even surpassing it. Wanda approached, her attention focused on the remains of the disintegrated corpse in front of her. She spoke softly, something's not right. Pietro and Sumarokov raised their eyebrows. Something's wrong, Pietro asked. Wanda nodded. I can feel it, here whatever that thing is, it's not dead yet. Without hesitation, Wanda extended her right hand. The chaotic energy of her magic flared to life, swirling violently as she focused on the remains. With a sharp gesture, she clenched her fist. Boom. The space in front of them, spanning hundreds of meters, suddenly collapsed under the immense force of her chaos magic. Everything in that space, rain, gravel, soil, and even the scattered pieces of the corpse, was crushed into nothingness. Pietro and Sumarokov exchanged glances, knowing full well just how overwhelming Wanda's chaos magic could be. As members of the same family, they had seen her unleash this kind of power before. It could be said that, aside from Leon, Wanda was unquestionably the most powerful in the entire family. Pietro, while formidable with his incredible speed, was still outmatched by Wanda's chaos magic. Pietro's speed was impressive, but it paled in comparison to the raw, terrifying power of her abilities. However, it was rare to see Wanda unleash her chaos magic to its fullest potential, so few fully grasped the extent of her strength. Now, feeling the weight of Wanda's power firsthand, Pietro and Sumarokov exchanged uneasy glances. The cold determination on Wanda's face left them both swallowing nervously. They silently vowed never to show off in front of her again. One misstep, and she could crush their internal organs without a second thought. Just as they were contemplating Wanda's terrifying abilities, an ominous and suffocating presence suddenly erupted from the front. It felt like a monstrous force from the depths of hell, cold and overwhelmingly powerful. The atmosphere around them shifted, time and space seemed to freeze. A low, hoarse voice echoed, "You are more powerful than I thought. Before, I was bound by the contract. But now, even if it means offending that person, I will drag your souls to hell." The ground began to tremble violently, cracks forming across the highway, while the torrential rain was forced back into the sky under the immense pressure of this dark force. Wanda, Pietro, and Sumarokov stood their ground like unyielding pillars, unaffected by the chaos around them. Despite the earth shaking beneath them, they remained still, their focus locked on the terrifying sight ahead. In the space that Wanda had crushed with her chaos magic, something even more horrifying was happening. The blood and remnants of the figure began to reform, taking on a human shape. A new figure emerged, vastly different from the previous image of the gentlemanly old man. This creature stood tall, with red skin, a thin and grotesque body, and a face twisted with ugliness. His sharp teeth gleamed, and his eyes radiated violence and greed. Behind him, a devilish, slender tail flicked back and forth, while a tattered, bright red cloak clung to his bare upper body. The pouring rain and the oppressive aura surrounding him felt like a mountain pressing down on Wanda, Pietro, and Sumarokov. The sheer power of this monster exceeded their expectations, filling all three of them with a palpable sense of danger. It was a chilling realization: they were facing a true life or death crisis. As they squared off against the monster, Jeff and the others had retreated several kilometers back in their RV. Armed with high-precision night vision binoculars, they watched the unfolding scene in awe. Their jaws dropped, shock evident on everyone's faces. "Look, I knew it. Now there's some kind of ugly monster." Adam excitedly slapped his friend's shoulder, his voice loud with excitement. "Wanda and Pietro must have noticed the creature, which is why they told us to stay in the car." "Yeah, looks like you were right, Adam. You're amazing," Lena responded absent-mindedly, her eyes glued to the binoculars. But as she watched the unfolding battle, her heart raced. The fantasy playing out before her felt almost surreal. It was as if her wildest dreams had come to life and only she could fully appreciate it. Who doesn't indulge in fantasy? Lena and her friends were at that age where their dreams were vivid, but unlike many girls who fantasized about meeting a handsome vampire prince or some dashing male protagonist in a romantic script, their dreams were different. They didn't dream of love stories. They wanted to become superheroes like Wanda, strong, brave, and independent. They imagined themselves walking alone through the darkness, battling monsters, and experiencing the thrill of extreme fighting. In their fantasies, they were misunderstood by the world, yet they embraced their legendary fates. Even in death, they would be remembered as heroic figures, their stories retold for generations. Up until now, those were just daydreams, fantasies they indulged in when they were lost in thought. But now, witnessing Wanda in action, it felt like their imaginations were becoming reality. Wasn't Wanda living the life they dreamed of? Lena and her friends were not ordinary in their imaginations. As they pieced together the events that had unfolded, the old gentleman, the battle with the monster, they quickly crafted a narrative in their minds. In their version of the story, Wanda and her twin brother Pietro were born with extraordinary abilities. Jealous of their powers, others caused their parents' deaths during the war, leaving the twins orphaned at a young age. They wandered the world, struggling to survive and discover their true selves. Along the way, because of their unique abilities, they encountered monsters and dark forces invisible to ordinary humans. Witnessing the horrors brought on by evil creatures, the twins vowed to fight back, dedicating their lives to protecting the world in silence. As they traveled the globe, honing their abilities in battling monsters, they met a new ally, Sumarokov. Together, the trio formed a team, confronting one supernatural crisis after another. In Lena's mind, there were even more dramatic moments: life and death situations, the twins reuniting with loved ones, only to sacrifice personal happiness for their greater mission. Beneath Wanda's cold, determined exterior, Lena imagined a heart weighed down by sorrow, a heart that longed for peace but was bound by the vows she had made to protect the world. After imagining all these plots, the boys and girls were on the verge of bursting with excitement. Their eyes shone brightly, and they could hardly contain themselves. They wanted to scream. It all seemed so perfect. "If I could, I swear I'd join them," Jeff said, barely able to keep his excitement in check. "Even if it's just as a driver or a chef." Adam quickly shut down Jeff's dream with a laugh. "Come on, brother-in-law, do you really think you'd be the driver or the chef?" "That's my job. Hey, don't forget about us." A few of the girls chimed in, feigning indignation. Sure, Adam handled most of the cooking during their trip, but that didn't mean the girls hadn't helped. Adam did have an advantage, though his dad was a chef, and he had learned a few skills from him. But still, they all contributed in their own way. If anyone was qualified to be a chef for the team, they were. But cooking wasn't the only thing on their minds. Some of the girls were already fantasizing about something more dramatic: a love story in the midst of danger. What if Pietro or Sumarokov became heartbroken, devastated by one of them getting injured or worse? It was a dark, twisted thought, but somehow, they couldn't shake it. Maybe, just maybe, it would add a little more romance to the adventure. As they debated whether they should change into something more stylish and elegant once the battle ended, in the mirror dimension, Keisha's eyes were glowing with a holy light. She was tapping into her eye of insight, reading information, her delicate face radiating calm but cold resolve. "That thing from the hell dimension, it should be eliminated," Keisha stated coldly. "I agree," Leon replied, "but we can't eliminate him yet. Maybe we need to wait until we're stronger." Leon knew exactly why Keisha had reacted this way. The angelic civilization, rooted in a theocratic ideology, was heavily influenced by Queen Keisha's controversial order. Though angels were incredibly strong, their power wasn't limitless. They rarely interfered with the natural development of lower civilizations, avoiding direct genetic modifications or forced advancements. Instead, they promoted justice, only stepping in to punish evils that these civilizations couldn't handle themselves. What made them truly admirable was their spirit of sacrifice. Despite their aloofness toward lower civilizations, angels often faced the gravest dangers with unwavering bravery, using their beauty to take on the most perilous tasks. They protected the weak, even when they knew it meant their own demise, creating countless heroic legends in the process. From a human perspective, angels might have had their flaws, but their commitment to destroying evil was unquestionable. When dealing with it, they acted with swift and overwhelming force, obliterating their enemies completely. Demons, in particular, were the top priority for angels to annihilate. For centuries, the Merlot Heavenly Court, led by Queen Keisha, and the demon army, commanded by Demon Queen Morgana, had clashed. Countless angel warriors had sacrificed their lives in ongoing war, and even Keisha herself had not escaped the toll of that eternal battle. The hatred angels harbored toward demons is deeply ingrained, almost coded into their very DNA. Even if the demon in front of them wasn't directly related to Demon Queen Morgana, demons, in general, were seen as embodiments of evil and darkness close enough to be treated the same. From the angel's perspective, the solution was simple: eliminate them. Leon, understanding this deep-rooted animosity, tried to calm the slightly irritated angel. After all, they weren't currently strong enough to storm the hell dimension and kill the self-proclaimed Satan, Mephisto, in person. Yes, the monster before them was none other than Mephisto, the demon lord. Of course, this wasn't his true form, but rather a small soul projection, a way to bypass the contract he had signed with the Ancient One. This allowed him to roam the world, making deals and claiming human souls. This time, Mephisto had crossed paths with Wanda and Pietro, likely drawn by Wanda's extraordinary soul. Chaos magic was too iconic, easily attracting the attention of powerful beings. The old guy's angry now, and Wanda and the others are in serious trouble, Leon remarked with a soft smile. Looks like it's time for the real hero to step in. He thought to himself that after defeating this fragment of Mephisto, it would be a good opportunity to add the Demon Lord's genes to his ever-expanding genetic database. Mephisto, now fully transformed into his demonic form, radiated an overwhelming, oppressive force that felt almost tangible, pressing heavily on Wanda, Pietro, and Sumarokov. If not for their immense physical and mental strength, they might have crumbled under the sheer weight of his presence. This wasn't merely a test of combat ability, it was a suppression that came from the very essence of life. Despite being just a soul projection, Mephisto was still on the level of a Skyfather, an entity far beyond their reach. If this had been his true form, one glance from him would have likely reduced Pietro and Sumarokov to ashes in an instant, their souls condemned to eternal torment in hell. Only Wanda might have lasted a little longer. Wanda, sensing the imminent danger, quickly deployed her chaos magic, slowing time around them. The downpour of rain seemed to fall at a crawl, each droplet clearly visible to the naked eye. Even with this shield, the three of them felt like a fragile boat in a storm, ready to capsize at any moment. You've done well. I'm more impressed with you than ever. You are special. Mephisto's low, rasping voice echoed through the sky as thunder rumbled above, flashes of red lightning slicing through the darkened sky. The flashes of lightning briefly illuminated the desolate land below. Pietro, we can't defeat him. We need to leave, Wanda whispered, her gaze fixed on the demon floating in the stormy sky. She knew they stood no chance, and she didn't want to push their luck, especially if Leon and Natasha found out. They'd definitely get a scolding. Should we call for backup? Pietro, the younger and more impulsive, was hesitant to retreat in defeat. If the three of them couldn't win, surely the rest of the team could take this red-skinned monster down. Wanda shook her head. There's no need for that. From what this old guy mentioned earlier, there's likely something on Earth that's restricting him. We don't need to take unnecessary risks. All right, just hold on, Pietro began, but before he could finish, a violent, powerful surge of energy swept over them. Their expressions shifted as they realized too late that Mephisto had already anticipated their plans and launched his attack. Mephisto's black magic unfolded in full force. The ground beneath them began to crack, and from the fissures, the red flames of hell erupted. Within the flames, the faint wails of countless tormented souls could be heard, their screams filling the air as they clawed desperately, sensing fresh souls nearby. These souls, trapped in the abyss of hell, seemed to be trying to break free and enter the human world. The entire area, spanning several thousand meters, had transformed into a scene straight out of purgatory. Hell, we've got to move. Pietro's eyes widened in fear. He grabbed Wanda and Sumarokov, attempting to speed them away, but the oppressive aura weighed down on his very soul, stiffening his body. It was as though he had lost control over himself. Damn it, if only I had that kind of overwhelming power like Leon, Pietro cursed under his breath, wishing he could awaken the same dominating energy. Trying to run. That's not happening. Mephisto's grim laughter echoed through the air. He had already taken the risk of breaking his contract, there was no way he would let his prey escape now. His eyes glowed with hellfire as he spread his arms, readying another surge of dark magic. But before Mephisto could strike again rumble, it felt as though the heavens and earth were colliding. The will of an ancient god stirred, and a torrent of spiritual energy, like a violent ocean, surged forward. This unstoppable wave of force transformed the world around them, turning the sky blood red. Dark clouds rolled in like an oncoming storm, thick and suffocating, as if they were about to burst at any moment. Red lightning flashed through the darkness, intertwining with the thunder, creating a chaotic scene. The scale of this power was immense, apocalyptic even. Outside the epicenter, Jeff and the others in the RV struggled to breathe as the two clashing forces divided the sky into two realms. One, a world of darkness, evil, and despair. The other, so pure and overwhelming that it felt as though it could shatter souls with its sheer intensity. It was like the end of the world had arrived. It was terrifying. The scale of the event felt like the end of the world itself, making it nearly impossible for Jeff and the others in the RV outside perfection to catch their breath. The clash of energies split the night sky into two realms, one full of gloom, darkness, and pure evil, the other, so pure and overwhelming, it felt like it could shatter souls with its mere presence. Mephisto's expression darkened as he stared ahead, sensing a familiar and ominous aura. Wanda and her companions, startled by the shift, turned around. There, 100 meters away, stood Leon, dressed in a red leather jacket and jeans, walking toward them with an air of calm. The power emanating from Leon was like the wrath of a god, making the world tremble in response. The rain falling from the sky evaporated before even touching the ground, and the air around him distorted under the sheer weight of his aura. Boss Leon, Leon. Seeing Leon, Wanda and the others breathed a sigh of relief, their faces lighting up with reassuring smiles. To them, Leon was mountain of strength, always standing firm behind them. No matter the challenge, no matter how powerful their enemies, they believed that as long as Leon was there, they had nothing to fear. This time was no different. Leon's sudden arrival and the unprecedented, terrifying power he unleashed caused Mephisto to furrow his brows, his face dark with tension. Despite being a demon lord who had roamed the world for countless years, encountering all manner of people, this new presence unsettled him. The only other humans who had ever impressed him were the mages. Their mastery of white magic and their iron will had always stood out. The Ancient One, in particular, had been the greatest among them. As for mutants, Mephisto viewed them as little more than genetically enhanced beings. Talented as some might be, such as the former Apocalypse, they never posed much of a threat to him. But this human, Leon, was different. The sheer force of his presence, his defiance of Mephisto, shook the very fabric of reality. For the first time, Mephisto's gaze narrowed as he muttered, "Your soul, it's more special than theirs." Mephisto's hoarse, low voice echoed in the air, reaching everyone's ears. "How arrogant, Mephisto," Leon said softly, his eyes lifting to meet the demon's gaze as Mephisto hovered above. Leon's hair swayed slightly in the wind, his calm demeanor contrasting with the rising tension. "You human brat," Mephisto began, but Leon wasn't interested in hearing any more from him. Without hesitation, Leon raised his hand and waved it dismissively. In his mind, he communicated with Keisha. "Keisha, block the space in this area. I don't want this guy slipping away." "Yes, Captain Leon. Activating space blockade. The area within 9,000 meters will be isolated. Only god-level entities can break through," Keisha responded. A soft hum filled the air as strange space fluctuations rippled outward. Mephisto, sharp and ever watchful, noticed the shift immediately. His eyes narrowed as he glanced around, assessing the situation and the human he had originally thought was merely a promising talent. "You blocked the space. This strange power, even I didn't sense it at first," Mephisto muttered, intrigued. Despite the space being sealed, Mephisto felt no panic. As a demon king who had lived for countless millennia, he had faced innumerable schemes and hopeless situations in the depths of hell, only to emerge victorious each time. He had claimed the throne of Satan, becoming the ruler of hell itself. This projection of his soul might be destroyed, but the loss wouldn't be catastrophic. His true body would remain unharmed, and he would recover over time. What truly piqued his interest was Leon's ability to cast such a flawless space blockade. At his level, much could be understood in an instant, even the threads of fate. It was no wonder beings like Mephisto, classified as Skyfather level, were referred to as gods. They had touched upon the realms of omniscience and omnipotence. And now, Mephisto was beginning to see that Leon was no ordinary human. The more beings like Mephisto understand the world, the more they develop a unique mentality, one centered around control. They easily foresee the general flow of events and, if they can peer into someone's future, believe they have the power to control it all. This mindset, however, makes them particularly reactive to anything unknown, dangerous, or beyond their grasp. Mephisto, despite seeing Leon as a powerful and exceptional human, couldn't shake the suspicion that the space-blocking power Leon displayed wasn't his own. It felt out of place. "Let's make a deal," Mephisto said, trying to lure Leon in with one of his trademark propositions. But Leon wasn't having it. He tilted his head slightly, cutting Mephisto off mid-sentence. "The look in your eyes, that malice is irritating," Leon said softly, his voice steady but cold. Whoosh! In an instant, a golden light erupted from Leon's body, transforming into countless shimmering particles that shot toward Mephisto. Before the demon lord could react, the golden particles reformed into Leon, who now stood face to face with him less than a meter apart. Though Mephisto towered over Leon in his nearly 2-meter demon form, there was no doubt that Leon's presence was just as imposing. For a brief moment, Mephisto tried again, beginning to speak, "Child," but before he could finish, his eyes widened. A glowing, golden foot was already swinging toward his head. The attack came too fast. Even Mephisto, with his billions of years of experience, couldn't react in time. Boom! The impact slammed into Mephisto's cheek with tremendous force, cutting him off mid-sentence. Mephisto flew through the air like a cannonball, trailing a long streak of golden energy, before crashing into the ground with an earth-shaking explosion. Dust and smoke billowed into the sky as his impact created a 100-meter-wide crater. In the distance, Wanda, Pietro, and Sumarokov quickly retreated from the central battle zone, positioning themselves near the RV where Jeff and the others were waiting. Their first priority was to evacuate the area, but they also aimed to protect their friends from any stray attacks. When Wanda and the others appeared beside the RV, Jeff and his group were momentarily startled, having been ready to put on oxygen masks in fear of the battle. But once they recognized who it was, their anxiety quickly turned to excitement. "Wanda, that was amazing. Was that red energy your power? Can you make those giant arms appear again? You were so cool, I thought I was going to faint." Jeff exclaimed. "Wanda, you're perfect. I'm totally in love with you now." Another chimed in. "Pietro, Sumarokov, you guys have been holding out on us, haven't you?" One of the boys shouted. "When we were playing games before, you must have sensed something was off. You said your car broke down, but you were really tracking that monster to protect us, weren't you? Oh my god, I love you all so much, it's like you're heroes straight out of a movie." Their admiration was overwhelming, with excited eyes practically glowing with awe. Pietro, always the playful and boastful one, soaked up the attention. He struck a confident pose, lowered his voice for effect, and said coolly, "We're just the vanguard in the darkness. It's our duty to fight against the darkness and protect the world," Pietro said, his voice filled with a sense of purpose. As thunder cracked overhead, his face, illuminated by flashes of lightning, seemed to match the gravity of his words. Jeff and the others were already fully sold on the idea, several even clutched their chests, on the verge of fainting from how cool he looked. He was so striking that a few of the younger girls in the RV nearly flung open the door to run into his arms. Pietro, catching sight of their admiring expressions, felt an immense sense of satisfaction that almost made him burst with pride. Meanwhile, Wanda and Sumarokov stood to the side, rolling their eyes at Pietro's dramatics, but they were too tired to call him out on it. Wanda, in particular, was more focused on the ongoing battle. A massive storm raged just beyond them, though they were shielded by an invisible barrier. Her eyes glowed red as she observed the battlefield with growing surprise. She knew that Leon had blocked off the space within a 10,000-meter radius, and while she had some understanding of his powers, this level of control was astonishing. She made a mental note to ask him later, though she knew she'd have to tread carefully. Leon did have a tendency to spoil the younger ones, especially the girls. She smirked to herself, amused at the thought. On Leon's side, he had no idea that Wanda, one of his favorites, was already scheming about how to get something out of him later. His focus remained on Mephisto. That lightspeed kick he had landed, bolstered by his speed, had the force of 1,000 tons. But Leon knew it wouldn't deal fatal damage to someone of Mephisto's caliber. Buzz. Leon crossed his hands, forming a brilliant golden light between them, like he was holding a miniature sun. And then, that sun exploded. Countless golden light clusters shot toward the ground like meteors, their brilliance contrasting beautifully against the dark night. But beauty wasn't the only thing these golden spheres brought. Boom, boom, boom. In an instant, the glowing orbs struck the earth, igniting a series of explosions that shook the ground. Mushroom clouds of fire rose high, illuminating everything around them. The air swirled violently, sweeping away debris like a tidal wave, swallowing everything in its path. Gravel, weeds, telephone poles, and billboards lining the kilometer-wide stretch were torn apart. Even the shattered power lines sparked faint arcs of electricity. The ground within several kilometers looked like it had been hit by modern missiles. In that entire zone, no living thing could survive. Anything caught in the blast would be obliterated. Outside the sealed-off area, Jeff and the others clung to anything they could find in the RV, their bodies shaking violently with the impact. The powerful winds wouldn't harm them, but it gave them a visceral sense of just how terrifying the explosion at the center must be. Through the windshield, their wide-eyed stares were locked on the distant figure in the sky, Leon, still unleashing waves of glowing light. The awe on their faces was undeniable, as if they were gazing upon a god. He's so cool, one of them whispered in pure amazement. He's like a god. And believe me, Jeff, if I were a woman, I'd fall in love with him, Adam said excitedly, slapping Jeff's shoulder. Repeatedly. It hurt, but Jeff didn't care at all. Several of the girls were staring with hearts practically in their eyes. How could anyone be so handsome, strong, and utterly perfect? And on top of all that, fast and able to fly. It was the total package, a sure way to steal their hearts. They were absolutely smitten. Pietro, who had been basking in the girl's attention moments ago, noticed their sudden shift of focus to Leon. His once cool and confident demeanor vanished, leaving him speechless. In no time, the girls who had been fawning over him had shifted their affections entirely. Superficial, the lot of them. A bunch of shallow girls, Pietro huffed in annoyance, crossing his arms. His friend, Sumarokov, knew him all too well. He caught Pietro's expression and immediately understood what was going through his head. Sumarokov bumped Pietro's shoulder and, comforted, "Come on, Pietro. Don't feel bad. We all know you're a charming guy, but at the end of the day, you're just a boy. And when it comes to the boss, well, Leon's on a whole other level." "Go away," Pietro muttered, feeling very touched by his friend's attempt at comfort. He shot Sumarokov a friendly middle finger in response. Sumarokov chuckled, clearly enjoying Pietro's reaction. Watching his usually mischievous friend get flustered gave him a sense of satisfaction. After all, someone had to put Pietro in his place when the chance arose. Their banter was cut short by Wanda. Her eyes, glowing like red gems, were fixed on the aftermath of the explosion. Her delicate, serious expression made it clear something was off. "I can feel it, that guy's completely unharmed." Pietro and Sumarokov looked at her in surprise. Leon's attack didn't do much. Wanda continued, her tone tense. "What?" Pietro raised an eyebrow. The wind whipped through his hair and clothes, but he hardly noticed as he crossed his arms, thinking. "Those light attacks were like missile strikes." Sumarokov nodded. "With that kind of bombardment, and the guy's still fine." "Who is this guy?" Leon called him Mephisto, Wanda said softly, her pink lips barely moving. "Mephisto." Pietro and Sumarokov exchanged confused looks. The name sounded vaguely familiar, but they couldn't quite place it. Wanda, however, didn't have time to elaborate. The situation was far too serious for distractions. Leon called him Mephisto, Wanda murmured softly, her pink lips barely moving. "Mephisto." Pietro and Sumarokov looked at each other, confused. The name sounded familiar, but they couldn't quite place it. Wanda didn't press them, instead focusing on the red figure looming in the flames. She whispered, "Demon Lord Mephisto." Demon Lord. The realization finally hit Pietro and Sumarokov, their expressions turning to shock. "Wait, isn't that the guy who rules hell?" "Exactly," Wanda confirmed, her red eyes glowing with intensity. "If the creature we're facing is truly Mephisto, it means one thing." Pietro and Sumarokov stared at her, their faces now serious. Hell, Leon had mentioned to them once, during a casual conversation, that the world was far more complex than they could imagine, with beings from other dimensions and realms. They had believed him, but always with a small sense of doubt. After all, they had never encountered anything that otherworldly until now. Mephisto's appearance shattered all of those doubts. The demon lord himself was standing before them, the ruler of hell. "Man, this is insane," Pietro muttered, his usual playful demeanor replaced with concern. "What we've dealt with up until now was nothing, just some shady organizations and their little winter projects. Now we're talking about facing mythological beings," Sumarokov added, his voice tense. "Is this why Leon's been having us capture all those guys?" Wanda's expression hardened as she interrupted their thoughts. "Leon has his reasons, and whatever those reasons are, we follow. We support him. No questions." Her gaze locked onto Pietro's as if saying, "Question me and you die." Pietro felt a bead of sweat trickle down his forehead. Pietro quickly threw his hands up in mock outrage. "Hey, Wanda, are you serious? How could I ever question Boss Leon? Are you doubting my loyalty to him?" His voice grew more dramatic, and he clutched his chest as if heartbroken, his face full of exaggerated sadness and hurt. "I can't believe you would think I'd question my own family, Wanda." Wanda rolled her eyes, clearly unimpressed with his theatrics. She had more important things to worry about. A flicker of concern crossed her face as she turned her gaze back to the battlefield. Leon, the rain of light that filled the sky had ceased. Leon hovered above, releasing his hands from the cross-shaped gesture he had been holding, his eyes fixed on the red figure below. The strong wind howled, dispersing the flames and smoke, revealing the devastation beneath. The land below was cratered with pits like the surface of the moon, of varying sizes and depths, the ground itself scorched and torn apart by the sheer power of Leon's attack. Yet, despite all of that, Mephisto stood there, unharmed. A thin, blood-colored barrier shimmered around his body, barely rippling from the impact. The demon lord looked up at Leon, his voice cold and filled with disdain. "I hate your impulsiveness, kid," Mephisto growled. Then, without warning, he spread his arms wide. The very atmosphere seemed to shift as an overwhelming, indescribable force surged toward Leon. Faint whispers and eerie murmurs echoed from all around, as though the sky and earth themselves were conspiring against him. "I hate your impulsiveness, kid," Mephisto growled, his voice cold as he glared up at Leon. With a sweeping gesture, Mephisto spread his arms wide, and the very fabric of space and reality seemed to twist. A crushing, indescribable force surged toward Leon, filling the air with faint whispers and murmurs. These eerie voices carried a dark power, designed to weaken the will, seduce the soul, and drag it into an endless abyss. But Leon, who had awakened his conqueror's haki, was far too strong for such tricks. His fighting spirit burned too brightly to be touched by these dark enchantments. His sharp gaze cut through the illusion, and he spat a single word, "Get out." Boom! A torrent of overwhelming spirit erupted from Leon like a mountain crashing into the sea, sweeping across the battlefield. The sheer force of his will crushed Mephisto's dark magic, shattering whispers and murmurings into nothingness. Even Mephisto, the demon lord, felt the impact. His very soul trembled, wounded by the surge of Leon's power. The weight of Leon's spiritual force bore down on Mephisto, pinning him in place. The gravity around him seemed to intensify, making even flight impossible. Mephisto struggled to lift his gaze toward the sky, where Leon hovered like an unshakable colossus. The dark clouds above parted, revealing the full moon, casting its light behind Leon and making him appear almost divine. For the first time, Mephisto felt the full weight of Leon's strength. It wasn't just physical power, it was the indomitable spirit of a man whose courage could shake mountains. And the more Mephisto saw of it, the more he coveted Leon's soul. It was unlike any other, both mysterious and unyielding. A soul like that would be of the highest quality. But Mephisto's malicious intent was too obvious. Leon's response was swift. Whoosh! In a flash of golden light, Leon's body dissolved into countless bright particles and vanished. Mephisto sensed the attack coming just in time. He spun around, arms raised defensively, but it wasn't enough. A swift, golden shimmering kick connected with his arm, the impact like a clap of thunder. Boom! Mephisto managed to block the strike, but the sheer force of the blow sent a shockwave rippling outwards, tearing the ground apart and widening cracks in the earth. Rocks and debris floated unnaturally into the air, defying gravity. Not far from Leon and Mephisto, the very ground was pulverized by the sheer force of their clash. The space around them warped like black hole, consuming everything that drew too close, reducing it to nothingness. The cracks in the earth widened, and where Leon's feet met Mephisto's arms, red and black lightning crackled violently, filling the air with a deafening sound like the cry of 1,000 birds. Amid the stalemate, Mephisto was the first to act. He raised his free hand, conjuring a black and purple magic circle in his palm. Danger! Leon's instincts flared. He felt the dark energy surrounding him like a tidal wave, threatening to crush him from all sides. The air itself seemed to tremble as something terrible stirred within the magic. Without hesitation, Leon pulled back his right leg with lightning speed, crossing his arms as bright golden light surged through his body. In that moment, he became a living beacon, radiating blinding energy. The very atmosphere around him began to churn, a storm of unimaginable power brewing at his command. Mephisto's eyes widened in disbelief. Could a mere human possess such raw, overwhelming energy? This brat was barely more than a teenager, yet he wielded power that defied comprehension. Feeling the threat, Mephisto quickly unleashed every bit of his dark magic. He summoned layers of black and purple defensive barriers in a desperate attempt to shield himself. But before he could finish fortifying them, boom! A cataclysmic blast erupted. Golden pillars of light shot into the sky and surged across the ground like an ocean of molten energy. The searing heat and overwhelming force melted everything in their path, leaving nothing but devastation in their wake. Inside his protective layers of magic, Mephisto watched in horror as the golden light shattered his defenses one by one. The wind howled, whipping his cloak violently, and even the mighty demon lord swayed, struggling to stay grounded as if he were an insect caught in a deadly storm. Damn it, Mephisto muttered, his face twisted in shock. He had never imagined such terrifying power could come from a human. The golden light illuminated the earth for hundreds of kilometers, banishing the darkness. Even residents in nearby cities witnessed the phenomenon, bewildered as they pulled out their phones to capture the rare sight. None of them knew that, just hundreds of kilometers away, on a desolate road, a demon lord feared by the world had been bested by a human. As the brilliant beam of light slowly shrank and faded, calm returned to the land. Outside the sealed 10,000-meter radius, Wanda, Pietro, Sumarokov, and Jeff sat in the RV, utterly speechless. Bang! Jeff and the others, as if puppets on strings, opened the car doors and stepped outside. They stared up at the sky, their eyes wide with shock. The once dark and stormy sky, filled with heavy clouds, had been cleared by the golden light. The downpour that had soaked the area ceased entirely, leaving behind a stunningly clear night. A bright moon now hung high, surrounded by countless twinkling stars. The scene was breathtaking, yet, beneath this tranquil beauty, something far more awe-inspiring took place. High above them, Leon floated, his strong hand gripping Mephisto's throat. The demon lord was not faring well. Moments ago, Leon had nearly dealt him a devastating blow by awakening the full extent of high power. Despite being a demon lord, Mephisto was still, at his core, a dark creature innately vulnerable to the power of light. After all, why else would the angels in heaven constantly suppress hell? While power struggles play a role, the inherent weakness to light also factors in heavily. Now, Mephisto's once imposing demon form had begun to flicker and grow faint, his essence becoming slightly illusory. Mephisto's breath was weak, his hands and tail hanging limp, but despite his condition, he still carried himself with arrogance. "You're something special. I like you more and more," he said, his voice steady despite his weakened state. Leon stared at him in silence, but Mephisto mistook the look in his eyes, misreading it as hesitation. A smirk curled on his lips. "You're not planning to kill me, are you? I can see it in your eyes. That glimmer, oh, I know it well. It's ambition," Mephisto purred, his voice unexpectedly soft. "You're different from the usual humans, aren't you? Ambitious. Unlike those small-minded fools," he continued, his tone calm and persuasive. "Most humans are ignorant. They crave wealth, power, women, life, and to get it, they'll trade anything, even their souls. They make deals with devils, enjoying a brief moment of satisfaction, but in the end, they lose their souls. They become slaves, tortured, sold like property." Mephisto's eyes gleamed. "But you're different. You have ambition, yes, but it's bigger, more rational." Leon nodded slightly, as if acknowledging Mephisto's words. "What you said makes sense. I do have ambition," Leon admitted. Mephisto's demon grin widened, confident. "See, we're alike. We can make a deal, you and I. I can help you achieve whatever it is you desire." Leon's eyes narrowed with interest. "I'm curious," he said, his voice cool. "What kind of deal are you proposing? I don't know if you're aware, but you're not alone in this world. What I can tell you is that there's something much bigger beyond it," Mephisto said, his voice dripping with intrigue. Leon raised an eyebrow, his tone neutral. Little fox," Mephisto thought to himself, growing frustrated. Despite his attempts to read Leon, the human remained a mystery. Outwardly, Mephisto maintained a charming smile. Asgard, hell, heaven, the dream dimension, these are secret realms, unknown to most humans on Earth. He paused, studying Leon, but the young man's expression gave nothing away. "So, what's your point?" Leon asked softly. Mephisto leaned in, his voice smooth, almost seductive. "These dimensional gods rule their worlds, enjoying near-eternal life. Isn't that something you'd want? To be like them, a god?" Leon didn't flinch. "And you, being one of them, don't have the power to help me achieve that." Mephisto's grin faltered slightly but quickly recovered. "Well, to a certain extent, I do. But I suspect you wouldn't approve of the method's side effects, and all that." Leon raised an eyebrow, prompting him to continue. "I admire you greatly," Mephisto said, eyeing Leon closely. "There's a mystery about you that I can't quite unravel, and mystery often leads to an unimaginable future." Mephisto, despite his arrogance, realized something important. Even with all his power, he couldn't fully understand Leon. Two possibilities crossed his mind. Either Leon had someone stronger backing him, or he possessed some unknown, mysterious power of his own. If it was the former, Mephisto would be eager to flatter and align with this hidden force. After all, he hadn't climbed to the throne of hell by strength alone, cunning and shamelessness played their part. But if it was the latter, Mephisto faced a decision. Should he risk everything to eliminate Leon and uncover his secret? Or, perhaps, it was wiser to show goodwill and seek an alliance. The idea of killing Leon was too complicated for Mephisto. Due to his contract with the Ancient One, he couldn't even set foot on Earth. Summoning his minions from hell would be an insult to her authority, and the last thing he wanted was to provoke the Ancient One into storming hell to destroy him. Mephisto knew how ruthless she could be, especially as her time was nearing its end. He couldn't afford to stir trouble with her now. Realizing this, Mephisto leaned toward the safer option. He weighed his choices carefully, and Leon, sensing Mephisto's thoughts, remained unbothered. Leon understood that Mephisto might scheme behind the scenes, but he didn't care. His confidence rested in the Sky Blade, and in the adult world, everything boiled down to interests and benefits. Leon loosened his grip on Mephisto's throat, allowing him to breathe easier. This gesture clearly showed that Leon accepted Mephisto's offer of goodwill. Seizing the moment, Mephisto quickly said, "I can grant you access to hell." "Hell is vast," Mephisto began, gesturing with his fingers. "In human lore, it's often depicted as a mysterious, dangerous, and dark place, embodying the darkest aspects of humanity." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. "Hell is dangerous, sure. Not much better than the hypocritical kingdoms of heaven. Bu. Where there's danger, there's also opportunity." Leon nodded, processing what Mephisto was saying. Though hell was terrifying in the human imagination, it was still a massive dimension filled with powerful demons. It operated with its own structure, and within that system, resources and treasures beyond what the human world could offer were born. There were even taverns, mercenaries, and other services in hell. "So," Leon asked, "what's the price I need to pay? If you, or your subordinates, help me with something at a specific time and place, I'll give you what you desire," Mephisto said, revealing his true intentions. Leon smiled slightly. "That sounds fair. Of course," Mephisto added confidently, "you can refuse my offer, but I don't think you will. This is a smart deal, and you're not the type to lose out." As expected, Leon didn't refuse. "Then, we have a deal," Leon said. Mephisto chuckled and extended his hand. In a flash of black-purple light, a burning flame appeared, a hellfire. "This is the anchor to the hell dimension," Mephisto explained. "Through it, you can locate and teleport to hell at any time." Leon snapped his fingers, causing the hellfire to vanish from Mephisto's hand. The blockade on the surrounding space lifted. This subtle gesture confirmed Mephisto's suspicions. This human was mature beyond reason, unnervingly confident. He realized Leon was either completely mad or possessed a level of power that allowed him to treat even a demon lord as an equal. As Leon accepted the hell coordinate, Mephisto's demonic form began to fade, leaving one final remark before disappearing entirely. I look forward to our next meeting, Mr. Leon. Leon narrowed his eyes, his calm expression hiding a mysterious smile. Keisha. A calm voice responded in his mind, I am here, Captain Leon. The target, soul projection of Demon Lord Mephisto, has been recorded. Analysis complete. Race. Demon system. Power level. God tier. Beginning calculations to counter Demon Lord Mephisto's God-level combat capabilities. Leon smirked. From the moment the space was sealed, he had instructed Keisha to use Sky Blade's support to scan Mephisto in every detail. He had been cautious all along, never trusting Mephisto's manipulations. Much like Batman's wariness of Superman, Leon, despite cooperating, kept his trump card ready. It didn't matter if Mephisto's soul projection was killed. Leon had bigger plans, especially when it came to Hell's rich resources. A dimension of such magnitude was far too valuable to ignore. He had no intention of letting it slip away. Mephisto, an ancient being who has lived for countless billions of years, had countless schemes in his mind. He believed he could gradually manipulate Leon through repeated transactions and alliances, ultimately achieving his own goals. But Leon's approach was far more straightforward and brutal. His goal was simple: take control of Mephisto and claim the Hell dimension for himself. However, knowing he wasn't yet strong enough to take down Mephisto directly, Leon decided to play along, pretending to cooperate until the time was right to strike. In addition, the anchor to the Hell dimension has passed Sky Blade's inspection. It's genuine, but it also contains Mephisto's beacon. Every time you travel to Hell, Mephisto will receive a signal, Keisha explained. Leon listened without surprise. While Mephisto's offer of cooperation was real, his nature as a manipulator meant there were undoubtedly traps hidden within the deal. Can the signal be blocked? Leon asked. Yes, Keisha replied. The coordinates have already been recorded. You can teleport to Hell independently using Sky Blade's remote terminal. With that confirmation, Leon knew he had the upper hand. Mephisto's tricks were expected, but Leon's own plans were already in motion. If you don't need to use it now, keep it in plain sight for Mephisto. When the time is right, that small detail will be his downfall, Leon thought to himself. As the night's events came to a close, Leon stretched his body. The battle had served as a test of his recent training. As he suspected, the Sky Blade's performance had reached an incredible level. It was truly a bug. The Angel battleship's combat power was estimated to be at least at the quasi-Skyfather level. Real-time monitoring of the Sky Blade ensured the most efficient training, and the rate at which his strength was growing was astonishing. Bang! Leon's body shifted into photons, transforming into a beam of golden light that shot into the sky. Within seconds, he traveled thousands of meters before gently descending like a feather, landing smoothly. Wanda, Pietro, and Sumarokov quickly approached as Leon landed in front of them. Behind them, the younger members of the group stood hesitantly, unsure whether to follow. They had witnessed Leon's godlike presence firsthand, his power splitting the sky and forcing a demon like Mephisto to submit. Despite their usually cheerful personalities, the teens instinctively feared Leon's immense strength. They felt more at ease around Wanda, Pietro, and Sumarokov because of the time they had spent together in the RV, which built a sense of familiarity. Leon smiled warmly. You did well, but it's a shame the opponent you faced this time was quite strong, he said, patting Pietro and Sumarokov on the shoulders. Then, he gently ran his fingers through Wanda's soft hair, speaking to her with a soft tone. Wanda closed her eyes, clearly enjoying the affectionate gesture. Pietro couldn't help himself and asked, Boss Leon, was that really the devil who rules Hell? Leon nodded. It's exactly who you're thinking of. Pietro scratched his head in confusion. He didn't seem all that strong. In his mind, Mephisto, despite being powerful, didn't live up to the terrifying reputation he'd imagined. Sure, he was stronger than Pietro, Sumarokov, and Wanda combined, but nothing like the legendary devil he expected. Leon chuckled and knocked Pietro on the head gently. That was just a projection of his soul. Not even 1% of his real power. And don't underestimate anyone who uses magic. Pietro, Sumarokov, and Wanda were some of the most formidable beings on Earth, especially Pietro, who could move several times the speed of sound. His abilities were so overwhelming that almost no one on Earth could rival him, except for maybe Psychic Slick. Professor X. Even Magneto had to be careful around Pietro's speed and strength. Pietro was no ordinary speedster. He had 2 forms of hockey, mastery over breathing techniques, and had been injected with Sky Blade's super soldier serum. This made him an incredibly enhanced version of Quicksilver. His physical durability and high-speed movement were unparalleled, and several times the speed of sound wasn't even his limit. As time passed, Leon knew Pietro's speed would keep increasing, potentially reaching the speed of light. But even with all his strength, Pietro knew magic was a tricky thing. On the magic side, Leon explained, strength can be deceptive. You can be the strongest warrior, but one well-placed spell could end you. Never underestimate a skilled mage. It was a lesson Pietro and the others took to heart. Magic wasn't just about raw power, it was often about precision, subtlety, and traps. And Leon, with his deep experience, never allowed those around him to take magic lightly. Pietro winced as Leon scolded him, immediately losing his usual swagger. He looked more like a student being reprimanded by a strict teacher. Leon, about earlier, Wanda began hesitantly. Leon smiled warmly. We'll talk later, he reassured her. His gaze then shifted to Jeff and the others, who were buzzing with excitement. He couldn't help but notice the way three girls were eyeing Pietro and Sumarokov. Leon raised an eyebrow playfully and teased, looks like you made some new friends. He emphasized the words, new friends, making Pietro and Sumarokov exchange awkward shrugs. After the teasing, Leon approached Jeff and his group, greeting them with a friendly, hey guys, good evening. Hey man, you and Wanda, Pietro, you guys really blew our minds today. Jeff exclaimed, his voice filled with excitement and even cracking a little. His friends stood there nodding eagerly, equally awestruck. Leon gave them an apologetic smile. Sorry you had to witness something you probably weren't supposed to see, but you all seem to be handling it pretty well. No, Jeff interrupted, shaking his head quickly. Don't apologize. You showed us the real truth about this world. You're amazing, really. He paused for a moment before adding seriously, but don't worry, if this is something you want to keep quiet, we'll make sure it stays a secret. Well, thank you very much then, Leon said with a chuckle. No, you don't need to thank us. Jeff responded, waving his hands frantically as if Leon had said something outrageous. His exaggerated expression made Leon pause for a moment in surprise. No, Leon asked. Jeff said with a smile. Actually, yeah, we should thank you. For letting us watch a free live-action movie. Then Jeff's face turned serious to Leon's surprise, you and your team are out there fighting monsters hidden in human society, right? Leon blinked, a bit taken aback. Well, that's one way to put it, he admitted, impressed by Jeff's intuition. Jeff's eyes lit up, his suspicions confirmed. Exactly, you're out here walking in the darkness, protecting people from these powerful, evil forces without anyone knowing. We really should be thanking you. Yeah, his friends chimed in, nodding like a chicken's pecking at rice. Having seen Mephisto's terrifying power firsthand, they couldn't help but feel even more grateful that Leon and Wanda were fighting beings of that magnitude. They couldn't help but think that if Leon hadn't shown up in time, Wanda, Pietro, and Sumarokov might have been in serious danger when facing Mephisto. How many times had they found themselves in similar situations before? Images flashed through their minds, memories of past crises. On another quiet night, in a dark, secluded alley, a young man in a red coat with white lining lay battered and bruised. Blood spilled from the corner of his mouth as he lay motionless in the dirty, muddy alley. The walls around him bore the scars of battle, and not far away, the lifeless body of a demon lay as a grim reminder of the struggle. Soon after, several figures rushed toward him, his companions. Their faces were struck with grief, as if lightning had pierced their hearts. One of them knelt down, cradling the boy's lifeless body, red-eyed and fighting back tears. The others stood in silent sorrow, gently placing a hand on the shoulder of their grieving friend. Meanwhile, one companion worked to clean up the battlefield, while the others disappeared into the shadows, carrying their fallen friend. In the distance, faint sirens wailed, too late to be of any help. No one knew that a hero, who had silently protected humanity, had died that night. On the distant streets, people continued to enjoy their nightlife, blissfully unaware. The contrast was enough to break anyone's heart. Jeff and his friends imagined something like this happening, and their eyes flooded with tears. Leon, noticing their emotional state, looked confused. He wasn't sure what was going through their minds, but he could see they looked at him with admiration and sorrow. Their expression seemed to say, you don't need to explain, I understand. Chapter 15. Sorry, I was a bit sick and I kinda forgot I uploaded here, as I generally stack the chapters before uploading here. If you want 1,000 words chapter every day, visit the book on web novel, chapter 78 to chapter 86. After chatting for a while, Leon finally understood what Jeff and the other teens were thinking. He had to admit, their thought processes were a bit hard for him to follow, but there was something undeniably charming about them. Jeff was full of energy, always lively and mischievous, with a great sense of humor. Even with strangers, he exuded warmth and enthusiasm. He approached life with an optimistic outlook and was determined to follow through on his goals, like their RV vacation trip. A year ago, Jeff had the idea to travel with his friends in an RV, but his savings weren't enough to buy one. So, he spent 2 school holidays working odd jobs to save up. He even went out of his way to learn practical skills: car repair, electrical work, computer programming, drawing, route planning, shooting, and cooking. And all this while still being a 16 or 17-year-old student. It was rare to see young people with such admirable qualities, and even more impressive that they had formed a tight-knit group. Leon couldn't help but be intrigued. Despite their quirky behavior, these teens were promising. Their character, determination, and the way they handled themselves even after witnessing a battle between Leon and Mephisto was commendable. With that in mind, Leon suddenly wasn't in such a rush to leave. He glanced up at the sky, his presence seeming to break through dark clouds overhead. However, the storm tonight was intense. As they spoke, the clouds rolled back in, and the rumble of thunder echoed above them, signaling another downpour. Looks like it's going to rain heavily again, Leon said with a smirk. Do you mind inviting me into your RV? I'm curious to see what it's like. Jeff's face lit up with excitement. He exchanged glances with the three girls before nodding enthusiastically. Of course, it would be an honor. After Jeff spoke, he and his friends seemed almost giddy with excitement. They quickly opened the door to the RV and eagerly invited Leon and Wanda inside. Leon, smiling, followed Wanda into the vehicle. Thanks to Jeff's thoughtful planning, the RV was spacious, even with its furniture in place. Despite having an extra person on board, it didn't feel cramped at all. Jeff hopped into the driver's seat and revved the engine, but the road ahead was a mess due to the battle between Leon and Mephisto. The ground was full of potholes, making it impossible to drive through. Luckily, Texas roads are often parallel to open plains, so Jeff just needed to veer off the main road and make a wide detour to get back on track. Being quick-witted, he immediately turned the steering wheel and pressed the gas pedal, trying to get ahead of the incoming storm. Inside the RV, Leon and Wanda sat together in the front row, with Pietro and Sumarokov behind them. Lena and the three girls were across from them, while Adam sat in the front as the co-pilot and navigator. The girls were lively and chatty during the ride, though they kept their questions somewhat restrained. They didn't directly ask about Leo or Wanda's identity, but were curious about things like how many monsters existed in the world and what kind of demon Mephisto was. Leon, with his easygoing personality, didn't mind answering a few questions. He picked some that he could answer without too much detail, leaving the girls looking pleasantly surprised. As the night went on, the group relaxed, eating snacks, playing games, and chatting as the RV rolled through the stormy night. After learning Leon's name and hearing how Pietro and Sumarokov addressed him as Boss Leon, the others quickly followed suit, imitating them. Rumble. As the RV got back on the road, a loud clap of thunder echoed across the sky, and heavy rain poured down, drumming against the RV and the ground below. The sudden downpour filled the air with moisture, making it cooler inside. During the ride, Leon, Wanda, and Jeff exchanged social media accounts and phone numbers, even discussing the possibility of visiting each other in the future. When Leon casually mentioned that he lived in a wooden villa built by friends in the Ural Mountains, Jeff, Lena, and the girls were immediately intrigued. To them, it sounded like the base camp of some secret guardian organization, fueling their imaginations. Jeff was so excited that he jokingly suggested they change their travel plans and drive all the way to the Ural Mountains. Of course, it was just a joke. Jeff and his friends had meticulously planned their current RV trip, saving enough money and mapping out their route. Changing plans on a whim wasn't in Jeff or Adam's nature. Still, they were so excited about the idea that once their RV adventure was over, they promised to start planning a trip to visit Leon's mountain retreat this time, likely by plane rather than RV. Leon didn't mind, but Pietro and Sumarokov found it a little odd. They rarely saw their boss being so enthusiastic about anyone. Usually, Leon was calm and composed with others. Wanda, being more observant, had a sense of what was going on in Leon's mind. She didn't oppose the idea of adding more people to their family, just as she had welcomed Natasha, Death, and Clarice when they joined as backup members. In fact, Wanda liked the idea of expanding their circle. Psychologically speaking, people often crave what they lack, and Wanda was no exception. Having lost her parents when she was just 10, she had always longed for a sense of family. Leon and the children he had rescued from the base provided her with that feeling, but she didn't see any harm in expanding that family further. Wanda wanted more family members, as long as they met one condition: their character had to be approved by her, Leon, and the rest of the group. After spending some time with Jeff and his friends, Wanda quickly picked up on their personalities. Jeff, in particular, was an open book with a distinct character, never hiding who he was. Wanda appreciated Jeff and Adam's good nature. Maybe their only flaw was a tendency to exaggerate and make up stories, but Wanda found that trait endearing. People like them made life a lot more fun. After arriving in a nearby city, Leon, Wanda, and the others said their goodbyes to Jeff and his group. The girls seemed reluctant to part ways. Once they left, Leon asked Keisha to keep an eye on Jeff and the teens during their RV trip. He didn't want anything happening to people he cared about, especially while traveling across the US, where anything could happen. Even though New York had a high crime rate, places like Texas weren't much better. Texas had its dangers, with its rough culture encouraging ruthless criminals. Highway robberies and similar crimes were common occurrences. As for the incident with Mephisto, that was just a coincidence. It didn't follow the planned path of Wanda, Pietro, and Sumarokov's mission. Through their computer network, the trio had discovered strange happenings in Texas, which led them to investigate further. Meanwhile, Leon was more than happy to return to the New York manor. Wanda, Pietro, and Sumarokov were just part-time workers without Leon's leadership, so there wasn't much for them to do. As a boss of his stature, Leon only needed to step in when the situation was critical. While Leon and his group moved on, the Texas government found itself in a state of crisis. By that evening, as the rain continued to pour, the authorities received word of the strange events. The location was significant. It was a major transfer point between several nearby cities. By early the next morning, local and state police, along with the FBI from surrounding areas, were dispatched to investigate. Law enforcement agencies, including mounted police, gathered at the scene. Several sergeants coordinated efforts and reported back to the government, which held an emergency meeting. They quickly formed a joint investigation team made up of detectives from nearby cities. The idea was simple: everyone would share the responsibility. If the investigation failed, they'd share the blame; if it succeeded, they'd share the credit. It was clear that the higher-ups had a plan to cover all their bases. Several city police chiefs were hesitant about getting involved. For them, whether this incident turned into something significant or not didn't matter as much. What did matter was avoiding any mistakes. However, when the government issued an order, they had no choice but to follow through. Led by the police chiefs from Houston, Woodland, and Beaumont, the investigation team consisted of about 45 officers. Alongside them were a group of on-site investigators and law enforcement officers eager to assess the scene. But when the sergeants and officers arrived, they were stunned by what they saw. The area stretched nearly 10,000 meters, completely devastated as if countless missiles had hit. Cracks extended for miles, making it unclear whether the destruction was caused by an earthquake or some sort of massive explosion. Everyone fell into a heavy silence. "So, are we sure the military isn't testing new missiles here?" The white police chief from Houston asked, removing his sunglasses with a baffled expression. The other chiefs had similar looks of disbelief. Even the officers filming the scene seemed lost for words. A drone flew overhead, capturing footage that revealed deep craters of various sizes, resembling the surface of the moon. The only difference was that the craters here were filled with rainwater, making the scene even more surreal and murky. "Damn it, this is a real mess. Johnny, what did you find over there?" shouted the white sergeant from the Houston Police Department to one of the officers inspecting the area. Officer Johnny, who was using instruments to scan the scene, looked up and responded loudly, "No signs of explosives. It doesn't look like it was caused by a blast. Could the rain have washed away the evidence?" "No way. Rain would still leave some traces behind, but here, there's nothing at all," Johnny replied confidently. Other officers from nearby cities nodded in agreement. The white sergeant, looking even more baffled, took off his hat and scratched his white hair. He glanced at the other police chiefs, all of whom were just as confused. Finally, a black police chief hesitated before offering a guess: "Could this have something to do with mutants?" "You think there was some kind of mutant fight here last night?" "Maybe," he replied with a shrug. "It's a possibility," the white sergeant said, not dismissing the idea. "If mutants were involved, the scale of the battle would have been pretty intense." He then turned back to Johnny. "Get a team together and start searching the area for any body parts or traces of blood. We need to figure out what went down here." "Yes, sir," Johnny replied as he quickly set off to organize the search. Under the supervision of the police chief, the entire joint investigation team began a thorough search of the area. After 2 hours of effort, the results were disappointing. No body parts or blood traces were found. The police chiefs, after confirming the findings, were left frustrated and confused. They gathered around a police car, discussing the situation while smoking cigarettes. "Damn it, could this be some kind of supernatural event?" "Who knows," another chief replied. "If this much damage wasn't caused by explosives, only mutants could do this. But with no blood found, is it possible no one was injured? Or maybe someone cleaned up the scene?" "That's impossible," one of them quickly retorted. "Even if someone cleaned up, it would take professionals to leave no clues behind. Plus, with this much destruction and in such bad conditions at night, during heavy rain there should still be something left." As all their theories seemed to fall apart, a voice suddenly called out from the team. "Sir, we found a faint tire mark not far from the scene." The chiefs immediately perked up, tossing their cigarettes and hurrying over. Sure enough, they spotted a faint tire track just off the road. Although the marks were intermittent, it was clear that a vehicle had left the road, made a wide loop, and rejoined the highway on the other side. This discovery quickly became a breakthrough in the strange case. The joint investigation team, composed of seasoned police officers with years of experience, recognized the importance of the tire marks. After measuring the tracks, they came to a somewhat unclear but crucial conclusion. "These are 2 overlapping tire marks," said an older officer, squatting down to inspect them. He stood up and continued, "That means either 2 vehicles passed by during the incident, or the same vehicle returned. Whoever was driving may have witnessed what happened." A white police officer lit a cigarette and asked, "Can you tell what kind of car it was?" "The tracks are too faint and have been run over twice, making it difficult to determine the vehicle type," the officer replied. "All right," the sheriff said, thinking quickly. "Send someone to check the surveillance in nearby cities. I want a list of every car that came through here during that time. Find the owners and bring them in for questioning." Thanks to modern technology, every detail could now be magnified, ensuring a thorough investigation. Meanwhile, At the RV parking lot in Houston City Park, Jeff and his friends were still fast asleep, unaware that a federal investigation team was about to track them down. As for Wanda, Pietro, and Sumarokov, they had already vanished without a trace. But this incident had now caught the attention of someone at Xavier's school for gifted youngsters. In the early morning, dew dripped from the leaves onto the school's beautiful campus. Along the pathways, children walked together, chatting as they made their way to the cafeteria for breakfast. Inside the principal's office, Professor Charles Xavier sat in his wheelchair, watching the children with a calm, relieved expression. Behind him, the X-Men had gathered. Once everyone arrived, Charles turned his wheelchair to face them, ready to explain why he had called the meeting. Yesterday, I sensed the presence of someone who doesn't belong to this world, Professor Charles began, his tone heavy. A battle broke out somewhere in the United States, and it was on a very high level. He paused, emphasizing the gravity of the situation. As the world's most powerful psychic, Charles could sense high-level energy disturbances, even without the use of a psychic amplifier. If he chose to unleash his full psychic abilities, they would spread across the globe in an instant. How powerful are we talking? Logan asked, clearly puzzled. The concept of high level was too vague for him to grasp. The rest of the team saw the professor's serious expression and realized the weight of the matter. I've never encountered a battle of this magnitude in my life, Charles admitted grimly. Jean, catching onto something, asked, Professor, you mentioned someone who doesn't belong to this world. Yes, the professor nodded, his brow furrowing. Very evil and pure, and evil unlike anything I've sensed on Earth before. It's as if it comes from a different, sinister dimension. A being from another world, Scott muttered, crossing his arms in thought. But who fought against them? Did you sense that as well, Professor? No, the battle was brief, and there was a strange force that blocked my psychic abilities, Professor Charles explained. Someone can block your psychic power? Logan asked, surprised. The other X-Men exchanged uneasy glances. Logan, always eager for a clear enemy to fight, was visibly frustrated. What a hassle, he muttered. He preferred straightforward battles, ones where he could charge in, unleash his claws, and tear his enemy apart. But this mysterious, elusive threat bothered him. Jean frowned, her concern growing. If it's just an accident, we might not need to worry, but if it's intentional, we could be facing a new, unknown enemy. Professor, should we warn the government? The government's already involved, Charles replied, shaking his head. They've sent a joint investigation team to look into it, so they're aware. But so is the enemy. Our situation is much better before, and tensions between humans and mutants have eased. We just need to stay vigilant. When the time comes, we'll face this new threat together. Professor Charles, a firm believer in peaceful coexistence, had always advocated for harmony between humans and mutants. Though he sought peace, he wasn't naive. He understood that timing was everything. Offering help when it was needed most could strengthen their position, rather than simply stepping in when things were still calm. When the government and the people face a crisis, it's the best time for us to act, Professor Charles said thoughtfully. We've been extending goodwill to the mainstream public, so the timing doesn't really matter. The rest of the X-Men nodded in agreement. The professor paused, his expression deepening. Though, perhaps someone else is already fighting against that evil force. Who? Everyone wondered, startled for a moment before a familiar name came to mind. Professor, are you talking about Mr. Leon? Jean asked, her eyebrows raised. Leon, the mysterious figure they all knew, looked young but had a maturity beyond his years. His abilities seemed limitless, and his kindness toward mutants had left an impression. If it's him, it's possible, Aurora agreed, recalling her positive encounters with the mysterious Mr. Leon. Scott also nodded, still remembering when he was knocked out by a surge of red energy by a girl. Yeah, if anyone could handle something like this, it's probably him. Even his subordinates were very strong. Scott, the future leader of the X-Men, couldn't forget that moment a teenage girl knocked him out, even though he had been under the influence of drugs. It was a humiliation, to say the least. Thankfully, Scott wasn't the type to hold a grudge, otherwise, he'd have to carry that memory forever. After some reflection, Hank turned to the professor. Do you know where this battle took place? Near Houston, most likely, Professor Charles replied. Hank nodded and moved to the desk, opening the professor's laptop. After a few minutes of searching, his eyes brightened. Found it. He stepped aside to show the others what was on the screen. The X-Men gathered around to see images of the aftermath displayed on the computer, aerial shots from drones. The highway near Houston appeared utterly devastated. A 10,000-meter stretch had been torn apart by an immense force. The road was fractured, surrounded by craters of varying sizes, with deep cracks spreading for miles. Everyone was stunned. I accessed the Houston Police Department's network, Hank explained, and retrieved the data and images sent to them from the investigation site. The federal government's already involved, and they've formed a joint task force with nearby cities. Aurora's eyes widened in disbelief. It looks like a battlefield hit by missile strikes. The level of destruction is terrifying. Agreed, Cyclops said, still processing the images. The power needed for that level of damage is unreal. Seeing devastation from different angles, the X-Men realized that the intensity of the battle was far beyond anything they had expected. Hank then asked a very interesting question. Professor, do you think it was a coincidence that Mr. Leon was fighting this evil force from another dimension? Or was it intentional? This question left everyone deep in thought. Coincidence and intentionality are intriguing ideas. If it was just a coincidence, it's simple enough. But if it was intentional, it suggests Leon might have a way to predict or track down these evil forces. That would mean he's actively seeking out such threats, which could provide more insight into his character, clearly someone aligned with the side of defending against evil. Considering Leon's history, like the raid on Trek test base, this possibility shouldn't be dismissed lightly. The professor paused, thinking aloud. It could be a coincidence, or it might have been a deliberate action on Leon's part. Either way, he continued, the evil presence has vanished, and Leon seems to be the one who came out on top this time. Logan, growing impatient, cut in. Why are we sitting around guessing? Why not just call him and ask? We've got his contact info, don't we? His straightforward suggestion caught everyone off guard for a moment. Then Professor Charles smiled, a bit sheepishly. Logan had a point. They might not know Leon well, but they had communicated before. Asking him directly wouldn't hurt their relationship. With a nod from Charles, Hank pulled out his phone, scrolled through his contacts, and dialed Leon's number. Beep, beep. After a moment, the call connected, and Hank put it on speaker. Leon's distinct, youthful voice came through, clear and composed. Good morning, Professor, Hank, and Jean. A simple greeting, but it left everyone in the room stunned. How did Leon know who was there without being told? For a moment, they might have wondered if he had planted bugs or cameras at the school, but they quickly dismissed the idea. That was impossible. Still, it added another layer of mystery to Leon. Professor Charles, unfazed, responded with a warm smile. Good morning, Mr. Leon. Sorry to disturb you. Not at all. I just got up, Leon replied with a light chuckle. After a brief pause, his tone shifted slightly. Professor, I assume you're calling about last night. You sensed it, didn't you? Although phrased as a question, Leon's tone made it clear he already knew the answer. The professor and the others exchanged looks. Leon's response confirmed their suspicions it was him involved in the events last night. At this point, the professor decided not to beat around the bush any longer. He spoke directly. Yes, there was a lot of commotion last night, Charles began. Leon responded calmly, there was no avoiding it. This time, the opponent was different. Oh, Charles's face grew serious. Can you tell me, Mr. Leon? I'm curious as well. There was a brief silence, though it felt far longer to the X-Men, filled with tension and anticipation about this mysterious enemy. Finally, Leon broke the silence and said one word, Mephisto. The name sent a shockwave through the room, leaving everyone but Logan visibly stunned. Eyes widened, and Hank couldn't contain his surprise. What? Mephisto? Hank blurted out. As in the Mephisto? Yes, Mr. Hank. Leon replied with a slight chuckle in his tone, though no one paid attention to his amusement. All focus was on the name that had just been uttered, Mephisto, the demon lord of hell. The weight of Charles's earlier words suddenly bore down on the team. This was not just some powerful opponent. Mephisto was from another dimension entirely, a being of cosmic, malevolent power. Magneto, once considered their most dangerous foe, seemed like nothing in comparison. The very concept of hell and all its dark associations rushed into their minds. If Mephisto was truly involved, what did this mean? Did he intend to claim Earth for himself, to open the gates of hell and turn the world into his own infernal playground? Hank rubbed his head, his face a mix of disbelief and anxiety. This has to be a dream, right? He muttered, a bitter smile on his face. Mephisto. The Lord of Hell himself. The pressure brought by only the name was overwhelming. But Professor Charles, ever thoughtful, asked, Mr. Leon, how powerful is Mephisto? If it's the one from hell, shouldn't the destruction have been far greater? He wasn't wrong. The aerial images of the battle were terrifying, but for someone like Mephisto, the damage should have been catastrophic, possibly leveling entire cities. Something didn't add up. Leon's answer confirmed his suspicions. For certain reasons, Mephisto cannot manifest on Earth in his true form. What I thought was just a soul projection, much weaker than his actual self. Suddenly, everything made sense. The relief was almost palpable. After a brief exchange of pleasantries, Leon ended the call. Charles wisely refrained from pressing further. The relationship between the X-Men and Leon was still new and cordial, and he was, after all, a benefactor. There were answers, but mysteries still lingered, like why Mephisto couldn't come to Earth in his true form and what his true intentions were in sending a soul projection. Was this part of a larger scheme? These questions weighed on everyone's minds. The X-Men weren't eager to get entangled with Mephisto, but the magnitude of his presence was undeniable. The uncertainty of how this might impact them was unsettling. Seeing their concerned faces, Charles spoke calmly, easing the tension. Mr. Leon has already defeated Mephisto's projection, so it seems the Earth is safe for now. However, I'll continue monitoring this situation. Jean, keep an eye on the joint investigation team as well. They might uncover something useful. Okay, Jean gave a nod. At his New York manor, Leon hung up the call with Professor Charles. He wasn't surprised that Charles had sensed something. There were only a few on Earth with the ability to perceive events across the globe. Though besides the Ancient One, such individuals were rare. He didn't mind being a bit cryptic. After all, his relationship with the mutants hadn't reached the level where he needed to explain everything. Casually slipping his phone into his trouser pocket, he adjusted his white shirt, which was neatly rolled up at the sleeves, and glanced down at his outfit, trousers and white sneakers that complemented his toned, straight posture. Despite the simplicity, he had a look that balanced maturity with a youthful, fashionable edge. The real reason he was up so early, though, had nothing to do with work. Natasha, dearest, was returning from Russia, and she wasn't coming alone. She was bringing her family. The 4 young ones in the household had already left for school at a private academy. Though the curriculum was flexible, the school day started early, and the family's butler had taken care of their ride, chauffeuring them in a Bentley that emphasized their status. Leon didn't care much for aristocratic schools, but he understood the importance of appearances in that world. As he stepped out onto the manor's lawn, the maids greeted him with respect. He strolled forward, enjoying the peaceful morning. Unlike the bustling heart of New York City, the early morning at the manor had a unique charm. The sounds of birds, cicadas, and the distant neighing of horses from the stables blended into a calming symphony. It was a setting that brought tranquility and contentment, a perfect moment before the day unfolded. Leon savored the peacefulness of the moment. In his previous life, the constant rush had been exhausting, but now, in this world, H could finally slow down and appreciate life. Most people never get to enjoy this kind of calm and serenity. As he waited, his thoughts drifted to those who always seemed bent on destroying the world or wiping out humanity. Sure, many of them had tragic backstories, painful experiences that drove them to extremes. But still, if they had the power for revenge, why not aim it at the real culprits: governments, corrupt corporations? Why target the whole world? Leon leaned back in his chair, imagining the simplicity of sitting on the porch of a villa, surrounded by nature, watching the rain or snow fall. Why not appreciate this beautiful world instead? When you're tired, grab a juice, coffee, or even a whiskey. He knew he wasn't in a position to judge others, but still, when it came to world destruction, he had one thought: is it really worth it? Destroying the world seemed exhausting, a complete waste of time and energy. Worse, you might get taken out by some superhero along the way. And yes, he was definitely thinking about Thanos. Sure, family planning on a galactic scale sounded noble, but really, planning for the entire universe and Earth. It was only a matter of time before someone came after him. His thoughts were interrupted as he looked up and saw a sleek, black fighter jet descending from the blue sky, its optical stealth system disengaging. The wind from its tail engine swept across the lawn as it landed gently. The jet's perfectly streamlined design would make any military enthusiast drool. With a hiss, the hatch opened. A metal ramp extended down, and Natasha, clad in her combat uniform, descended gracefully. Following her were Yelena, Melina, and Alexei, all dressed casually. When Natasha saw Leon, her eyes lit up with joy. Leon tilde. Her pace quickened as she walked over, arms open wide, and wrapped him in a warm hug. There was something undeniably comforting about her embrace. Round, soft and inviting. Leon enjoyed the moment, pressing gently against her as her familiar perfume filled his senses. For a brief second, his youthful impulses stirred, but he quickly composed himself, releasing Natasha without making it obvious. She noticed, of course, giving him a playful smile, but said nothing. He turned his attention to Yelena, Melina, and Alexei, offering each a polite hug. "Hey, welcome to the manor. It's good to see you all," Leon greeted warmly. Alexei, wearing a red and white plaid shirt, looked around with wide eyes. "We're happy to see you too, Leon. Wow, this place is amazing. I mean, this is the kind of rich life people dream about." Leon laughed, playfully punching Alexei's broad chest. "Just remember, Natasha's the one holding all the wealth. You might want to be careful with your words, you don't want to offend her." Alexei chuckled awkwardly, glancing at Natasha. "Come on, Natasha, you know I wasn't talking about you." But the humor in his voice couldn't hide the fact that he knew he'd slipped up. Natasha smirked, her red lips curving slightly as she shrugged. "You better figure out how to fix that." Alexei wore a bitter expression, staring at Leon with mock resentment. Leon just laughed, shrugging it off, indicating it wasn't his fault. Yelena and Melina smiled, clearly enjoying the playful banter. The lighthearted teasing created a sense of harmony, drawing everyone closer. Even though Alexei was the most straightforward of the group, the rest were content, and the atmosphere felt naturally comfortable. Leon then led everyone to the racecourse, while Natasha went back to the manor to change her clothes. At the horse farm, breakfast tea and fresh fruit had already been prepared by the maids, per Leon. Instructions. More than a dozen strong horses wandered leisurely across the spacious fields, occasionally breaking into a run. The racecourse, part of Leon's luxurious estate, was as grand as one would expect. Equipped with top-tier facilities, it also boasted stunning surroundings. Rolling buildings lined the course, with vibrant green countryside visible in every direction. White grandstands reflected the morning light, adding a clean, elegant touch to the scene. In the distance, a dense forest framed the view, while the vast, well-maintained lawns could double as a golf course. Not far from the racecourse, a lake with crystal-clear water shimmered under the sunlight. The private grandstand featured a wide, three-dimensional wooden floor, leading to a two-story structure designed specifically for the estate's owner. This structure was made mostly of transparent glass, allowing for relaxing, dining, and conversation while enjoying the view. The rooftop of the second floor provided a perfect spot to overlook the beauty of the racecourse. The racecourse was located quite a distance from the main manor, requiring a specialized electric transport vehicle to get there. Leon and Yelena strolled casually, taking their time and enjoying the surroundings without any urgency. When they reached the open-air rooftop on the second floor, there were no railings around it. The area was furnished with handcrafted wooden tables and chairs, along with neatly tied sun umbrellas. Alexei sat at a long wooden table, sipping from a tiny cup and pretending to savor the fragrant breakfast tea. He couldn't help but exclaim, "Ah, this is heaven." Melina, sitting nearby, shared his sentiment. She adored the luxurious estate, thinking back on her past life, which felt like a stark contrast between hell and heaven. Yelena, on the other hand, was more spirited. She shouted playfully, "If I lived here, I'd become a lazy bum waiting to die." Her energetic outburst made Leon laugh. "Of course," Leon said, smiling. "You're all Natasha's most important family, which makes you our family. Treat this place like your home." Alexei, clearly delighted, patted Leon on the shoulder with a force that could knock over a cow. "I like you, Leon. If you ever need someone beaten up, just let me know. The great Captain Alexei will tear them to pieces." Leon chuckled. "I believe you can." Leon effortlessly deflected Alexei's powerful pat and spoke softly. He truly believed in the strength of the Russian warrior. Alexei, after all, had been injected with the super soldier serum, making him a match for Captain America in terms of combat prowess just without the famous shield that Steve Rogers was known for. Despite his time in prison taking a toll, a little effort would easily get Alexei back in shape. If he ever truly unleashed himself, he could rival any superhero in New York. The key difference between him and someone like Rogers was that Alexei didn't hold back. If he considered someone his enemy, he'd be relentless, like a Russian bear tearing into his prey. He had brutally dismembered hundreds of enemies, breaking throats with merciless efficiency. Leon asked, "What are your plans for the future?" "I'm still a bit unclear about that," Melina admitted. She trusted Leon because Natasha did, and from what Natasha had said, Leon's character shone through despite his tragic past. He was mature, sincere, and gentle, a person worth relying on. Yelena, with a polite grin, extended her hand and said, "I want to learn how to beat Natasha here." It was a goal she was determined to achieve. Leon smiled and glanced at her. "You'll have to work hard for that. There's still a big gap between you and Natasha." Just then, Natasha emerged from the stairs, catching her sister's remark and teasing her with a playful jab. "Believe me, Yelena, it might take you 100 years to beat me. Actually, there's a good chance you'll never manage it in your lifetime," Natasha teased, overhearing the conversation between Yelena and Leon. She joined Melina's side as she spoke. Whatever," Yelena huffed, unwilling to accept defeat. Though she knew talking back was pointless, inwardly she was determined. She secretly vowed to learn Natasha's methods, push herself harder than ever, and one day, finally defeat her sister. In her imagination, Yelena pictured herself triumphantly pinning Natasha down, a grin spreading across her face at the thought, nearly drooling in amusement. Neither Melina, who looked on with quiet exasperation, nor Natasha, who gave Yelena a "What is wrong with you?" look, missed her bizarre reaction. "Wanda and the guys, where are they?" Natasha asked Leon, rolling her eyes at her sister's antics. Leon, with nothing to hide, answered plainly in front of Melina and the others. "They're off hunting dark races in different parts of the world." "Oh, looks like some things have been happening lately that I'm not aware of," Natasha remarked with curiosity. "Quite a lot," Leon confirmed. "But Wanda mentioned you had a surprise for me," Natasha said, her eyes lighting up. Her smile widened, her lips curling as she looked at Leon, her beauty captivating. "I'm really looking forward to it." "A really nice surprise," Leon replied, smiling back. "We'll talk about it later." Leon smiled but didn't explain further. Instead, he turned to Melina and said, "Natasha mentioned that you were involved in some of Dracov's classified research and development projects." "Indeed, Dracov trusted me," Melina said calmly with a nod. However, that trust had been earned through years of service, completing countless missions for him. In exchange, her hands were stained with the blood of innocents, including children who had died under brutal training regimens while she could do nothing but watch. She would have preferred never to have gained that trust. Unlike Natasha, Melina had never been brave enough to escape. After Natasha fled, guilt and shame gnawed at her countless times. But now, things were different. The demon Dracov was dead, and the nightmare that had haunted her for so long had finally dissipated. She could now confront her past with a sense of calm. Leon smiled, giving a knowing nod to Natasha, who placed a tablet in front of Melina. She hesitated for a moment but took it, her expression doubtful. As she reviewed the confidential information displayed, a flicker of surprise crossed her eyes. You took over his scientific research team, and the Sky Fortress project is 80% complete, she asked, astonishment in her voice. Leon nodded. Yes, Ms. Melina, are you willing to take over this team? I need someone who can supervise it, and I believe you've had contact with them before. Indeed, it was the Sky Fortress project. After using Wanda's chaos magic to alter Dracov's will, Leon had seized his gray assets in Scientific Research Division. With the acquisition of Sky Blade No. 7, he entrusted Keisha to advance the Sky Fortress technology. Sky Blade, originating from a high-tech civilization far more advanced than Earth's, made the Sky Fortress seem almost trivial in comparison. As a result, the initial estimate of 4 to 5 years for the fortress's completion had been shortened to just 6 months or even less. The Sky Fortress was intended to serve as a foundation for cultivating future forces, a critical piece in Leon's long-term plans. Sky Blade had always been his hidden trump card, and he had no intention of involving Wanda or anyone else with it. Even if he gained access to Merlot Heaven later, he planned to keep those powers completely separate from Earth. Leon's plan was simple: use Earth as a springboard to build strength and, in the future, create a kingdom similar to Asgard. However, he intended to keep the angelic civilization, which he had control over through the Sky Blade No. 7, secret and independent. On the surface, two massive forces would appear unrelated, but behind the scenes, both would be controlled by Leon. In time, a new kingdom, comparable to Asgard, would rise to face the universe, while the Sky Blade No. 7 and eventually the angelic civilization would act as another transcendent power. As the sign-in system's rewards became more powerful and the angel civilization was perfected, Leon's sights would shift to new targets. The so-called angels of this universe. He preferred the term birdmen for them. The resources in Heaven's dimension were vast, and Leon planned for the angelic civilization to one day replace the birdmen and take control. This was another of his hidden cards. Since the appearance of Sky Blade No. 7, Leon had adjusted and refined his future plans. But these ambitions were kept entirely to himself, buried deep within. Not even Natasha, Wanda, or anyone else he trusted knew the full extent of his vision. These hidden cards would only be revealed when a new crisis emerged. As a wise man once said, amateurs chase the sun and get stays in the shadows. In the chaos of the cosmos, playing it safe was essential. One wrong move and he could easily be swallowed by an unknown threat. Caution was second nature to him, ingrained deeply in his character. As for Melina, she had no idea of Leon's broader strategy. From her perspective, being entrusted with the scientific research team was a significant gesture of trust. From Melina's perspective, Dracov's scientific research team was a highly valuable asset, cultivated over many years with immense resources. Even a billionaire might not have access to such a team, but Leon had entrusted it to her. Taking a deep breath, Melina nodded. I'm willing to manage this team. That's great. I believe the Sky Fortress will soon become one of our key trump cards, Leon said, giving the impression of issuing casual instructions. In addition, the team is working on a new technology that deserves special attention. New technology? Everyone asked, puzzled. Yes, Leon continued. I found this technology in an incomplete set of technical drawings from a secret Hydra database. It's artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence. The group was stunned. That's right. According to the data, if fully developed, AI technology could lead the world's technological frontier. It could play an immeasurably important role for us, especially when integrated into Sky Fortress to assist its operations. What Leon referred to as AI was actually Keisha from Sky Blade. Developing advanced artificial intelligence was not only feasible but easy for Sky Blade No. 7, capable of surpassing even Tony Stark's famed Jarvis. But how could any artificial intelligence compare to Keisha? With the development of AI and futuristic technologies, Leon didn't need to over-explain. He could simply attribute advancements to the AI and move on. I understand, Melina said thoughtfully. Sky Fortress is impressive, but to keep it flying for extended periods, it requires a powerful energy source. The current engines need constant replacement to activate the energy core, and that's costly. Leon nodded in agreement. Dracov's Sky Fortress, while advanced for human technology, had its shortcomings especially when it came to sustaining flight, which required immense energy. Even with turbine engines and anti-gravity tech, the resources it consumed were a significant financial burden, even for Leon. Natasha thought for a moment before chiming in. I remember that Stark Industries developed a massive arc reactor. The power it generates is substantial and could probably sustain Sky Fortress for a long time. But that technology is the Stark Group's core secret. It won't be easy to get our hands on it, she added. Leave that to me, Alexei interrupted, pounding his chest with confidence. That playboy Stark, I'll beat him until he hands it over. Tony is missing, Yelena said, rolling her eyes. Who exactly are you going to fight? Wait, missing. Alexei's fierce expression quickly turned to confusion. Leon briefly explained Tony Stark's disappearance. Alexei's expression shifted to one of sudden understanding, but gloating quickly followed, showing his lack of fondness for Stark Industries. Continuing, Leon shared that while the Sky Fortress's energy problem could be easily solved, the source was tricky to explain. He couldn't risk exposing the existence of Sky Blade. The arc reactor seemed like a good alternative. In that case, maybe we can use Tony Stark to our advantage, Leon mused aloud. Use him, but hasn't he been missing for 2 or 3 months? After being gone that long, he's probably dead, Yelena objected. Leon chuckled, shaking his head. Not necessarily. Everyone has a motive. I think it is someone in his company who is behind the kidnapping. Ordinary terrorists or criminals are just not equipped enough to do that. A billionaire and genius weapons developer. They want something money, technology, or something else. Leon's right. The odds are Stark is still alive, Natasha agreed. So, if we save him, do you think he'll thank us with a few arc reactors? Leon asked casually, taking a sip of juice. The taste was refreshing, reminding him how juice and coffee easily trump wine. Alexei grinned, thumping his chest with confidence. If we save him and he doesn't show gratitude, I'll take an arm off and make sure he's no longer a man. Yelena smirked. He'd probably be just freaked out by Alexei and call the cops. Haha, the other couldn't help but laugh. Alexei wasn't offended or embarrassed by Yelena's joke, instead, he felt proud. For this Eastern European man, having a fearsome body and appearance was something to take pride in. Then let's save this billionaire, Leon said with a smile. After enjoying a lovely morning, Leon, Natasha, and the others had a lavish, nutritious lunch on the manor's rooftop. The sheer variety amazed Alexei. Roasted whole chicken, pan-fried steak, lamb chops, hairy crabs, and other seafood filled the table. Alexei boasted that he could handle it all, but when he saw Natasha and Leon's appetites, he was stunned. They ate enough food for 5 or 6 adults by themselves, finishing the entire spread quickly and gracefully. Alexei, shocked, had no chance to eat more and wondered if Natasha and Melina were emotionally starving during their time apart. Naturally, Yelena didn't let the opportunity pass, teasing Alexei about his earlier boast. After lunch, everyone returned to the main manor. The maids had already tidied up, allowing Yelena and the others to take a short break. Finally, Leon revealed the surprise he had prepared for Natasha. Super Soldier Serum. As Natasha gazed at the injection tube in front of her, her delicate and charming face lit up with astonishment. Is this the surprise you prepared for me? She asked, stretching out her hand to pick it up. A slight smile appeared on her lips, and a ripple of intrigue danced in her beautiful eyes as she regarded Leon. She sensed that he was becoming more mysterious with each passing day. This serum can enhance your physical capabilities significantly, Leon explained with a smile. After injection, your strength will skyrocket. It will require a short period of adaptation, but since you have already built a foundation during your time in the Ural Mountains, this adjustment period will be shorter. He gently touched her back, emphasizing her figure as he spoke. And it will also repair any wounds in your body. Natasha's eyes sparkled with excitement, and she repeated his words in disbelief. Repair all wounds. Everything, Leon confirmed with a nod. A complex mix of emotions washed over Natasha, excitement and hope intertwined with memories of her past. The truth weighed heavily on her, she was not a complete woman. After enduring rigorous training in the Red Room, Dreykov had cruelly removed her uterus, stripping her of the natural ability to conceive. It was an indelible trauma that had buried deep within her heart. Like many women, Natasha desired to embrace her womanhood, but she felt that this was taken from her. Now, however, she saw a glimmer of hope. All of this was brought about by Leon. Natasha looked at him, her beautiful eyes shimmering with affection. His handsome face and gentle gaze radiated warmth, illuminating her like the sun. He had changed her destiny, guiding her out of confusion. Now, he was here to help her heal her remaining regrets and traumas. Leon tilde, Natasha couldn't contain her emotions any longer. She reached out, hugged him tightly, and buried her head in his neck. Leon felt Natasha's unique softness, but instead of feeling overwhelmed, he was filled with concern. He understood that beneath her tough exterior as a secret agent, she was incredibly tender, just like now, when she finally opened her heart and let go of the need to pretend. The two embraced in silence and tenderness for a long time. He gently patted her shoulder and whispered softly, "Go, Natasha, be your true self." Natasha replied, leaving Leon's arms and nodding tenderly. After an hour, Yelena's incredulous scream echoed through the manor. "My God, oh, my God, are you kidding me? How did you do it?" Yelena sat astride Natasha on the sofa in the manor hall, holding Natasha's charming face between her hands, moving closer and examining it intently, her eyes wide as if inspecting it with a magnifying glass. She had just gone to sleep, and after waking up, she suddenly noticed the incredible changes in Natasha sitting on the sofa. It wasn't an exaggeration, Natasha had changed so much that Yelena could hardly believe her eyes. Natasha's once delicate and charming face now seemed to have undergone some kind of precise plastic surgery. Her pores had disappeared, her skin was whiter, and everything looked far more refined. The most striking detail was that Yelena clearly remembered the scars on Natasha's arms, exposed by her short vest, and the 1-0. Her face both had vanished. It seemed as if they had been magically repaired. As the saying goes, whiteness hides all flaws. Natasha's skin, as a Russian, was naturally pale, but it had never been as white as that of someone with truly porcelain skin. Now, however, her skin had become even more flawless, with her pores shrinking, making her appear more refined and beautiful. Even her overall aura seemed to have improved. As a woman, how could Yelena not feel a surge of envy and jealousy? Her jealousy was about to spill over. A fanatical Yelena grabbed Natasha's face and demanded urgently, her voice full of desperation. She too wanted to become more beautiful, more refined. And it wasn't just her. Melina, standing beside them, also cast envious, eager glances in Natasha's direction. Natasha, for her part, seemed to enjoy it. Relishing her sister's obsessive admiration, she allowed Yelena to manhandle her face without protest, teasing her with silence. "Not telling you," Natasha finally said, the words as sharp as a knife. Yelena froze, her entire body going rigid. An intense murderous intent flashed in her eyes as she lowered her voice, sounding like a deranged killer. "Believe me, if you don't tell me your secret, I'll use the cruelest methods imaginable to dismember you, tear out your throat, and rip out your heart." "No way, I'm not telling you." "No matter what," Natasha replied, completely unfazed. This made the once menacing Yelena transform instantly into a little girl who had missed her bedtime candy. She clung to her sister, using the most irritatingly sweet voice imaginable. "My dearest sister Natasha, we're blood relatives. Are you really going to treat your beloved little sister like this? Tell me, sister not tilde taaa tilde shot tilde." Yelena was relentless, willing to risk everything. Beside her, Melina couldn't bear to watch anymore. She sat down next to Natasha, her beautiful eyes full of warmth as she gazed at her. All the commotion didn't go unnoticed. Alexei, who was grabbing whiskey from the bar's refrigerator nearby, couldn't help but shiver. Feeling goosebumps rise, he muttered under his breath, "Am I still dreaming?" Beside him, Leon, who was squeezing juice, smiled quietly and said nothing, casting a gentle glance toward the sofa. Sure enough, Natasha, who had undergone such a drastic change, had become something different, perhaps even more sinister. But, in his heart, Leon admitted he liked this version of her. Houston Police Department. The police station was bustling with activity as officers hurried back and forth. Inside the station's conference room, several sergeants from the Joint Investigation Team sat in their chairs, surrounded by a cloud of smoke. The white police chief of Houston stood at the podium, while a projector displayed surveillance footage from several locations across the city. His expression was grim. "Damn it, there's nothing there. Did he just vanish into thin air?" The investigation team was stumped. Tire tracks clearly indicated that two cars were headed toward Houston along the highway, but the surveillance footage didn't capture either of them. They found other cars passing by, but after thoroughly reviewing the footage, the target vehicles were nowhere to be seen. In fact, those cars weren't found on the highway at all. They were picked up on different roads entirely, but still left tire marks on the highway. It made no sense. It was as if the two cars simply disappeared from the footage. Several police chiefs even suspected that the surveillance had been tampered with, but after consulting multiple experts, the final judgment was that everything was functioning normally. But it defied reason. It was as if the laws of physics had been violated. How could two cars just vanish like that? It was beyond bizarre. "We just need one goddamn clue. Just one. Fuck." The investigation seemed to have hit a dead end, frustrating several police chiefs. What made it worse was that the military satellite footage had been obscured due to stormy weather at the time. The screen was unclear, then a golden light flashed briefly before dark clouds blocked the view again. No one could figure out what had happened. As the police chiefs sat smoking cigarettes, deep in thought, a knock on the door interrupted their conversation. The white police chief called out, "Come in." A female officer opened the door and announced, "Sir, the FBI is here." At her words, several men in suits entered the room. The police chiefs exchanged glances, no longer holding their cigarettes to their lips. The white police chief, Marley, wore a cold expression. H. glanced at the visiting FBI agents and said, "I'm Marley. Is there something you need?" The FBI, after all, isn't directly affiliated with local police departments, and there's often tension between the two. They have no hierarchical relationship, so there's no need for formalities. Local police typically have a different attitude toward troublesome federal agencies like the FBI unless there's an acquaintance involved. The lead FBI agent, a white man, didn't seem bothered by the cold reception. He smiled gently, took out a document, and handed it to Chief Marley. "Sorry to interrupt your meeting, Chief Marley. We only have a brief understanding of the situation, but it's drawn the attention of multiple departments. We don't intend to interfere with the joint investigation. In fact, we're here to offer some assistance. Once the investigation is complete, you can close the case, and we won't take over any further follow-up." After hearing this, the police chief's expression softened noticeably. Several of the senior police chiefs understood the subtext behind the FBI agent's words. They were here merely to observe, not to intervene, offering help without the intention of taking credit afterward. Marley eyed the white agent in front of him thoughtfully. This isn't like the FBI's usual style. The FBI was known for being more aggressive, and this approach felt almost like charity. The white agent maintained a neutral expression, pretending not to hear the remark. After all, he wasn't really from the FBI. In the office of the director of S.H.I.E.L.D., a knock on the door interrupted Nick Fury, who was buried in paperwork. Without looking up, he continued processing the documents and said casually, "Come in." As the door opened, a tall woman in a Kevlar uniform walked in. She had a sharp, attractive face and a cold demeanor. The female agent approached Fury's desk, placing a file within his reach. "Sir, there's news from Agent Fisher," she reported. How's the investigation going?" Fury immediately stopped his work, raised his head, and began flipping through the file. "It's not going well. One of the key leads has completely dried up, making the investigation difficult. Agent Fisher has requested assistance from the science department. Blurred tire marks, 2 cars vanishing into thin air." Fury read through the report, his face emotionless. After setting the document down, he tapped his pen on the desk absent-mindedly, deep in thought. "This is getting interesting. Seems like we're dealing with things beyond our usual scope." Various possibilities flashed through his mind. However, based on the existing clues, there wasn't enough to form a solid analysis. The only thing he could confirm was that the large-scale destructive power observed had no smoke or explosive reaction, indicating it wasn't caused by modern synthetic materials or conventional munitions. Fisher had applied to involve the Department of Science and Technology because he suspected that the energy reaction wasn't of human origin. Mutants, maybe, Fury pondered, but most of the world's dangerous mutants were already under SHIELD's surveillance, so it seemed unlikely. Fury felt a headache coming on. The energy fluctuation was terrifying. Although it had lasted only for a brief moment, the intensity made him briefly think the military had detonated a nuclear bomb on US soil. The damage shown on the screen covered only a few thousand meters, but that was due to the yield. With a higher yield, the explosion would have covered a larger area, yet the energy itself was almost comparable. The temperature at that moment had been so extreme that parts of the surface had been directly carbonized. That's why the impact of this incident is so severe. It's not that local nuclear tests haven't happened before. Most civilians don't know about them because the government and military have suppressed the information. While the government and military are aware of those incidents, this time, an energy equivalent to nuclear power exploded on the mainland without their knowledge. This is a major breach, and it's causing a lot of tension. The government and the military are still arguing over the incident. Agent Fisher seemed to agree. Fury tapped the table thoughtfully before something came to mind. "I remember the Department of Science and Technology recently brought in 2 new members with impressive credentials, right?" "Yes, Leo Fitz and Gemma Simmons. Send them both to investigate." "Yes, sir." After giving the order, Fury raised his head and looked at the female agent in front of him. "Hill, any news from Tony Stark yet?" "No, sir. Coulson has been keeping an eye on it, and none of Tony Stark's friends in the military have given up." "All right, tell Coulson to keep it. Stark's not the type to die so easily. This kidnapping probably has something to do with Stark Industries." "Understood," Agent Hill replied, then turned and left after Fury's explanation. Fury gazed at the pictures in the document he was holding, his single eye filled with deep contemplation. The strange disappearance is somewhat similar to that incident. Could it be those people? The Middle East, with its vital strategic location, has long been a region of conflict due to competition over freshwater and oil resources, as well as deep religious and cultural differences. The region is marked by perennial instability. Its dry, hot climate and plateau terrain block moist ocean air, worsening the area's drought and giving it a predominantly tropical desert climate. In a remote desert area in the Middle East, the sun blazed overhead, and the heat distorted the air. A temporary camp was set up there, with over a dozen military vehicles and several helicopter gunships parked in its vicinity. Colonel James Rhodes, a close friend of Tony Stark, stood frowning at a distribution map of the Middle East displayed on his computer. A large, dense red area was highlighted on the map, the region he had been searching for over the past few months. Still, there was no sign of Tony Stark. In fact, as early as the first month after Tony's disappearance, the military had lost interest in continuing the search. It was Rhodes insisted on pressing forward. Tony's secretary, Pepper, had assured him that all the search expenses were being covered by Stark Industries. With that support, Rhodes had withstood the pressure and led a military team to continue the search. But now, even Rhodes was beginning to feel a bit hopeless. He closed his eyes, sat on a bench, pulled a cigarette from his pocket, and lit it, letting the nicotine fill his lungs with its familiar, intoxicating sensation. In his exhaustion, the nicotine was the only thing that could offer him some relief. No one disturbed him during this moment of solitude. He wasn't sure how much time had passed, but as he neared the end of his cigarette, a strange feeling crept over him. This sense of unease immediately put his instincts on high alert. A veteran warrior, Rhodes reacted swiftly. His eyes snapped open as his hand reached for the pistol strapped to his leg, pointing it forward in an instant. The moment his eyes opened, he realized what had triggered his discomfort. A graceful figure had somehow appeared in his camp, silently observing the map of the Middle East on his computer, which marked the areas where the search for Tony Stark had been concentrated. The intruder had short, slightly curly burgundy hair, and was dressed in a short-sleeved vest, tight combat pants, and white shoes. Although Rhodes couldn't see her face, the tall, elegant silhouette suggested she was likely a very beautiful woman. But none of that mattered. What mattered was that she shouldn't be here, not now, not in this place. Rhodes frowned, noticing she hadn't turned around yet. He warned her, his voice calm but firm, "If I were you, I'd turn around immediately and tell me who you are and why you're here. Then maybe I'll consider not arresting you." In the Middle East, where warlords waged constant battles, anyone, man or woman, could be an assassin or a suicide bomber. He couldn't afford to take any chances.